Larry is off being lazy, clearly. So we're going to start without him and wait for him to join us. He's actually stuck in traffic, I believe, coming back from his radio show. So Vish and I will hold down the fort until he gets back. If he calls, though, I'm putting him on speakerphone and we're going to have a conversation live right here in front of all of you. I think it'll be a good time. Vish, my man, thank you so much for joining me tonight. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it's Thursday, which means, well, normally it would be Vish, Larry, and I, but we're waiting on Larry to return from his radio show. But I do have Vish with me, and Vish is enough. Vish, how you doing tonight, my man?
I'm good. How are you, Jesse?
I am doing fantastic. We were having a good little conversation backstage, and I actually want to bring that onto the show. It was a bonus topic that I had for all of us. But before we get into the 49ers overall, we were talking about stats in general. What do you think is the most overrated stat in football and why? And you can give more than one, I guess. I have one in particular that I can't stand, but there are multiple. There are multiple.
Yeah, so there's quite a few stats I can't stand in football. And I don't think it's actually the statistics I can't stand. I think it's how they're cited that really bothers me, right? The classic example, the one people have seen me fight against on Twitter is EPA per play. And I actually think it's a very, very quality stat. It really measures efficiency, expected points added. It is somewhat a little more nuanced in terms of actually measuring what a quarter or what an offense is able to do in terms of their efficiency than other statistics. My issue is when it's thrown out for the quarterback and driven is just a pure quarterback stat, when to me it measures more the offense overall efficiency versus the quarterback's actual efficiency. Another one is completion percentage, man. I don't understand the obsession with completion percentage, right? A quarterback throws like 68% completion. That means he's very, very good. Well, if he's throwing near the line of scrimmage and he's throwing in an offense that manufactures completions, it's much easier to be at a higher percentage than when you play in an offense that makes you push the ball down the field with regularity and make, higher difficulty throws. So it's more, I think completion percentage based on the difficulty of your throw would honestly be the best statistic, but we don't have a way of tracking or measuring that, especially given that throw difficulty is such a subjective thing. And then finally, I know the one you're going to hit on, so I'm just going to kind of tee you up with the alley Dwayne Wade to LeBron style. It's passer rating. Does anybody ever know how passer rating is calculated? One of the most BS stats of all time. I used to like passer rating in terms of a metric. I used to think it was a cool metric. Like, obviously, I like memorizing numbers. I think people have noticed that over the time of seeing me on these shows. And I used to be quite impressed by like Aaron Rodgers having the passer rating of like 121 in 2011, or Manning having a passer rating of 104 in 2004. Like, these were like genuine outlier passer rating numbers that I marveled at the time. Now it's kind of weird because the average quarterback has a passer rating of like 95, which I think was Steve Young's career passer rating. Having a passer rating in the hundreds at the time I'm talking about, like 10, 15 years ago, used to be prestigious. It used to be reserved for the greatest quarterback seasons ever. 90s used to be reserved for the most elite quarterbacks, and most quarterbacks were in the 80s, and the 70s were kind of like your lesser quarterbacks, excuse me. Now every quarterback is in the mid 90s. Now you have Jimmy Garoppolo with a career passer rating of like 98. So there we go, Jesse. For me, those are the three that I probably come to mind when we're talking about the most overrated stat. Time for you to explain why it is passer rating.
Yeah, well, yards per attempt. Did you say yards per attempt? I don't remember.
Oh, I didn't mention. Oh, yeah, yards per attempt. There's another one. I hate that one too.
Because yards per attempt takes into account yak, which makes no sense. It's not how far a player is throwing downfield. I think passer rating definitely is it for me. Yeah.
Not to mention if you're throwing a higher difficulty throw, right? So let's say I throw the ball down the field 10 times and I only complete 3 of them, but for 90 yards. My yards per attempt is 9, right? But let's say I complete 8 passes or 5 passes for 5 passes for 40, or let's say I throw 5 passes for 45 yards and I complete 4 of them, it's 45 yards versus 90 yards, but your yards per attempt in this particular case is the exact same. To me, yards per completion, some people track that, much better stat. Much better stat. That's more indicative of how far down the field the quarterback's actually throwing the football. Of course, both of them take into account. Yeah, my bad to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. And yeah, I can't. You're right. The 45 yards to 4 completions versus, or 5 completions versus 90 on 3. It's like, no, they're not the same. It's based off of your attempts. But passer rating is the one for me because 99% of people don't know how to calculate it. No clue, including myself. So I'm not acting as if I'm smarter than everybody. I don't know how to calculate it. Yeah, I don't know what the hell goes into it, but I did find a calculator a little bit ago where I was going through and I was just putting in random numbers. And I'm going to give you 2 stat lines, okay? Both of them have 220 yards passing. Both of them have 30 attempts. That's what they have in common. One of them is 30 attempts, 21 completions, 220 yards, and 1 touchdown. Okay. That gives you a passer rating of 102. So 30 attempts, 21 completions, 220 yards, and 1 touchdown gives you a passer rating of 102. The other one is also 30 attempts, but instead of 21 completions, it's only 11. The yards are the same at 220, but all 11 completions are touchdowns. So 11 touchdowns also gives you a passer rating of 102. Make that make sense, Vish. I don't understand it. That stat to me is completely overrated.
The touchdowns is what gets you the most kind of flabbergasted by the stat, right? And then it goes to show that at least one assumption we can make by listening to you cite those 2 metrics is that completion percentage plays a big part into the calculation of passer rating. And again, completion percentage is another one that's very, very not necessarily an indicative stat of how accurate the quarterback is. Because, right, you can play with some very good wide receivers in a good offense where people are open, and you can be slightly inaccurate a lot, but the guys can still catch the ball to give you a high completion percentage, right? My favorite completion percentage versus accuracy game, not to kick a guy when he's down, happy birthday, Jimmy Garoppolo, is the Super Bowl in 2019, played by one Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not going to make comments on how he played. I think I've done enough of that over the time that I've been streaming. What I will say is, if you want to do a nice little project of, hey, the guy has a high completion percentage in this football game, let's go see all of these completions if they're actually accurate and hitting the guy in the chest, that's a great game to watch. Then you can tell me, was he really accurate in that game despite how high his completion percentage number is? And so that's where I think that the biggest lesson in all of this is that it's not necessarily that the statistics are overrated, though we have titled the subject that way and we've been discussing the statistics that way. It's that when they're cited without context or cited without an understanding of what they're actually implying, then they can be overrated. And I think that's the bigger problem. I think statistics have their place when they're used to tell the right thing, right? When they're used to tell the story that they do tell. I think the bigger issue is that there's an irresponsibility with sharing data in NFL communities, I would say in general. I was making this joke a while ago, Jesse, like, dude, on every Monday, man, the way these Power BI visualizations get retweeted, I'll take all 32 quarterback heads. It'll take me 1 minute. I'll put them in a little Power BI. I'll wrap them up, put them in some sort of chart, and I'll put them with some sort of x-axis, some sort of y-axis, and put a line of correlation and say, hey, this is indicative of this. And 95 people are going to retweet it, dude. That's just how it's going to work. And that's, I think, the bigger issue in all of this, that people just don't know what these stats mean and often use them to tell a story. And yeah.
Well, they use it to tell a narrative that they agree with. If they don't agree with it, then they don't use the stat. They don't talk about the stat. They don't like the stat.
Right,
and I think that's where the issue comes in. And I'm actually going to completely disagree here with Cosmos. He said the almost picks. So the almost picks is actually turnover worthy plays, which includes fumbles as well. It's not just almost picks. The reason I prefer that over actual turnovers is because I think there are multiple things that come into turnovers themselves. One, a raw turnover. If I say this quarterback had 3 turnovers this game, but I don't tell you how they happened, that can be very misleading. What if 2 of those 3 turnovers were one of them was because the receiver dropped the ball, it bounced off his hand, and it was intercepted. The other one was a 3rd and 20, and the quarterback just took a chance on a fly route deep downfield that was intercepted, and the opposing team, started with the ball inside their own 10-yard line, just like a really good punt, but the quarterback took a shot. Not all turnovers are created equally, right? So just citing turnovers is not telling the whole story either. There are actually good in my opinion, there are good interceptions. That the one that I talked about where 3rd and 20 and you do an arm punt, Brock Purdy's a good example of this. I think it was the end of the first half against Miami. He threw a pick, but it was a 4th down. He just threw a go ball and it was intercepted. But I have zero qualms with that interception. But at the end of the year, it counts as an interception. And maybe that interception puts him above somebody else. And now people use it against him to weaponize it. And reality is that to me was a good interception. But the turnover worthy plays, at least, are going to tell you if a player is putting the ball in harm's way. Is it their fault that the ball was intercepted? Is it their fault that a ball was almost intercepted? Did they fumble the ball a bunch that they just happened to recover? That stat to me actually holds a lot of weight, and I think is a very good predictor of what is eventually going to play out, because law of averages always wins. They just do. So to me, I actually do like the stat. What do you think about turnover worthy plays?
I think it has its uses. Sometimes I think it can be again, this is the problem with all statistics, right? That they can be used to tell a narrative that they don't. And I think sometimes it can be like, oh, see, this quarterback is getting lucky. And sometimes when you go back and watch, it might not necessarily be luck on why they're turning the football over on some of those turnover worthy plays. It could just be, well, I guess circumstances, somewhat luck. Okay, I'm talking in a circle there. Let's go back a little bit. But okay, fair enough. I like the statistic. I don't necessarily love living in the land of hypotheticals, though, because then it leads into, well, if he did turn over the ball here, if he did turn over the ball there, whoa, whoa, there to save the day as I was making a mess of that. There he is.
What's up? What did I walk in on?
Oh, you just walked on me making a mess on the turnover-worthy play conversation.
We were talking about stats that are overrated, and we were just kind of going through them. And then somebody had made a comment about
would you guys say stats plays. Is overrated?
Yeah. Stats is overrated. No, not stats is overrated, but certain stats are overrated.
Certain stats. Thought we were walking into controversy.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. So which stat's overrated? Which one do you guys think is overrated?
Passer rating, yards per attempt.
I thought we would get to passer rating is overrated today.
Do you know how passer rating is calculated?
Yes, I do. It is fuck.
Dude, I thought he was gonna spit it out for a second.
I was like, I'm so impressed right now.
Oh, whoa.
Yes, passer rating is the derivative of. Do
you know what the derivative is, Larry?
It first started in the. God, what do you? I mean, I know. I don't look like the coolest guy of all time, but I mean, I don't know what passer ratings consist of. I do have 4 kids, a wife, and something going on in my life. But is this in any way related to the fact that Brock Purdy has the best passer rating on passes 25 plus yards down the field?
No, not at all. Actually,
I didn't even know that.
I didn't either. But check this out.
I'm not surprised though. Because he was
actually no. I'm gonna lie.
Down the field the last couple games.
Actually, I'm lying. I do know, but the only reason I do know is because I posted on Twitter that this stat was overrated, and then people started responding and said, "Well, Brock Purdy's got blah blah blah." So I'm gonna read you 2 stat lines, Larry. Check this out.
Okay.
I found a calculator for passer rating. I still don't know what the hell how they come up with their algorithm. So here's what these stat lines have in common. Both of them have 220 passing yards. Both of them have 30 attempts. And both of them have a passer rating of 102. Okay. Here's the difference. One of them is 30 attempts, 21 completions, 220 yards, and 1 touchdown. Gets you a passer rating of 102. The other one is 30 attempts, 11 completions, 220 yards, but all 11 completions were for touchdowns. Also gets you a passer rating of 102.
That's interesting. So it's yardage favored instead of touchdown favored.
No,
Is that what you're saying?
completion percentage favored because yardage is a control variable here. It's constant.
Oh, okay. I mean that it was completion percentage based.
Yeah, because 21 for 30 with one touchdown. Basically, you're comparing 21 for 30 with one touchdown versus 11 for 30 with 11 touchdowns. And it's the same passer rating with yardage being equal.
Well, that's odd though, because so I read this today that the highest passer ratings on passes 25 plus yards down the field, Brock Purdy's 1, Cousins is 2, CJ Stroud's 3, Russell is 4, Sam Howell is 5. So shouldn't Stroud, who has a low completion percentage?
No. What's Stroud's completion percentage on passes 25 yards or more? That's what matters.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
So it might be high, huh?
No, Kent says TDs are favored. They're not favored. One is 11 touchdowns and one is 1 touchdown.
Right.
But
I mean,
they both
11
have the
out
same
to
passer
11.
rating.
If touchdowns were favored, 11-1 is pretty
significant.
Yeah.
So the 10
I'd rather have
completions
the
matter
11
as much
touchdown
as
guy.
the 10 touchdowns.
I'd rather have the 11 touchdowns.
Yeah, me too. That's what I don't know. I don't even know what the hell goes into it. White Boy Rick says I'm overrated. I agree. I already said last week that I'm a system content creator. So these guys carry me every week. With the system of being with you guys. That's the system.
I told Kev last night in our stream that he's a system son. You know, and that I've got others that I can go to that are cheaper and that, you know, so if my salary cap here in Walnut Creek gets a little skew, I'll go to a cheaper son. If I can, as long as my thumbnails still look good.
How did Kev take this?
He's very competitive. So he swore Kev got into a swear fest last night.
Oh, really?
And then we discussed how if I swear, my wife gets mad at me. If he swears, my wife gets mad at me. Basically, if there's any male in our family that swears, my wife gets mad at me.
So maybe there's something wrong with the system. That's why your wife's mad.
Right.
Eddie says,
and her passer rating is low.
You got to franchise tag him.
I'd consider franchise tagging him. I would.
You got to see one
You
more year.
know what the market is for Suns these days? What is the franchise tag for Suns these days?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. It's going up.
Muff says that I'm not elite long term. That also gives you the inference that I'm elite now, which is also not true. So I don't know where that came from.
That's an underrated name, by the way, Muff. I don't know too many muffs. Hopefully that's short for something. Muffin, maybe?
Oh, yeah, muffin. It's muffin top is what he meant. Yeah.
Hey, muffin?
Yeah,
what's up,
that's
muffin?
what it is.
Yeah, we call him Muff.
Drew, wild night on the radio, huh?
We had Steve Kerr on tonight.
Oh,
yeah, we had a lot of Kerr questions, and the Warriors are feeling pretty good. And so, yeah, it was tough getting home from the city. It's a 2 to 6 shift. I drove today just for you guys because I don't want to take Bart. Because I'm like, if I take Bart, I'm not going to get there till like 8:30 or something.
You could have done the show from the Bart.
Yeah, I'm sure that would have been super entertaining.
Cowboys fan says that he would have beaten us after a bye. The Cowboys would have beaten the 49ers. I disagree. Styles make fights. And
who do you guys have in
Eagles?
Who do you guys have in Cowboys Eagles this week?
That's a toss-up to me. Division games are a toss-up, and both teams are good. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, is it weird to say that I'm kind of rooting for the Cowboys just so that Philly gets an extra loss? Like,
no, I'm definitely rooting for the Cowboys.
I think Dallas is going to walk in there and get it done.
And I'm rooting for Baltimore against Seattle.
Baltimore's going to beat Seattle because Lamar Jackson versus the NFC is damn near undefeated. Because the NFC they don't know how to prepare for him on 1 week.
Plus, dude, Seattle's offense is weird. They should be better than they sometimes just look out of nowhere. And Baltimore's defense is straight up legit.
That was the question of the week too, by the way. Do you guys? Because I don't know. I was on the record of saying I did not fear Seattle. But now they have Frank Clark and Leonard Williams on their front, and they already had a damn good secondary. So do you guys?
Yeah, Devin Witherspoon's looked awesome.
Yeah. Devin Witherspoon every week that goes by gets a little closer to Jalen Carter as far as defensive rookie of the year.
He's really good.
So
really, really good. He does
know?
everything, man. He does. And for being a smaller player, he's a very good blitzer. He's a very hard hitter. He's good in coverage. I mean, he literally does everything. Seattle, to me, was a team right after the draft. I actually made a video saying that they are going to be very competitive with the 49ers. And I mean, they're a good team. I think they're a good team overall. I know that people are, hey, Geno Smith is this or whatever, but I don't think that Geno Smith is as bad as people want to make him out to be. And I also don't think that when you're a team that doesn't have an established quarterback either, you can throw stones at a team that has somebody like Geno Smith, because really the sample size of good play is almost even. So I just don't, I hate when people say, oh, I'm not afraid of this quarterback or that quarterback. It's like, well, pump your brakes. Like, we don't exactly have a long-term proven quarterback either. I don't know. To me, that's a weird stance to take.
mean, under the assumption that the Niners of the last 2 weeks will go back away into hibernation and the old Niners will come back and play up to the potential we believe they have, I don't really view Seattle as a threat. I think the addition of Leonard Williams puts them a little bit forward, but they've been banged up in their offensive line for pretty much the entirety of the season. They lost Charles Cross early, and then he came back, and then Abraham Lucas got hurt. Though I think the guy that they're playing in replacement of Abraham Lucas has played pretty well. I haven't watched much of Seattle.
Is Lucas done for the year?
Cincinnati game. I think Lucas was done for the year. But the guy who was playing in replacement from him, I was reading something somewhere that he was playing pretty well, but I don't actually know that. I just read that somewhere, and I'm telling you that. But yeah, but
I don't even know his name.
Yeah, I don't even. I do know his name, but I can't.
I'm a big fan of the guy.
I'm not even a.
He's basically the quarterback rating of players, is what
when I'm a fan of a guy, you know I'm a fan of a guy. What did I tell you about that?
His name is Stone Forsythe.
Stone
Forsythe.
Yeah, I remember him coming out of the draft. Actually,
he's a Florida guy, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So that's a good name too. I mean, I'm not sure if it's as good as Muff.
Do I think he's good, Larry? Good. I have no idea. Did I see somebody else say he's been playing well based on some metrics in an article I was reading about possibly something else? Yes.
This guy's 6'7", 307. He looks like an athlete. Stone Forsythe.
Wait, but Larry, when I
sounds
when
like
I believe
sounds
in
like
a
a
guy,
movie character.
I was gonna say that's a movie football name for sure. The quarterback, though, I feel like the quarterback should be Stone. Yeah,
Stone
Larry, Forsythe.
Larry, yes. I will say, when I believe in a guy, I let you know. Did I not let you know about one Jermaine Pratt?
You did, man. I feel like I jinxed it because I was quoting you in the press box.
Oh, really?
Seriously, because he right before he made the pick, he got injured, and when he got injured, I was sitting there talking to the great John Dickinson of 95.7 The Game fame, and I'm like, my man Vish says that that Jermaine Pratt's a monster. I don't see it, man. I don't see what he's seeing. Boom, next play, pick. I was like, God damn it.
What did you say after that play? What did you say to him then? Just kidding.
Well, maybe Vish was right. Maybe Vish was right. God damn it.
Those two guys are very good. 57 and 55, Pratt and Wilson. Good duo.
Yeah, Logan Wilson made a nice pick too. But I don't know. To me, I thought I don't know. Both those picks are interesting because, like, some people think we're more offended by the first one because Brock should have known the rule after the handoff in a running play that if he tried to throw it, that the lineman would be down the field. But then I wonder if Brock, the only way that wasn't going to be a penalty is if Brock continued to run. But I was wondering if maybe he didn't continue to run because he just didn't want to take a hit because he has been concussed. So I don't know if all of a sudden his concussion factored into that play.
He could have given himself up and slid behind the line of scrimmage. I'll tell you this, Larry.
He took a negative play and made it a super negative play.
Right. I was one of those people who was very negative on the first pick, not so negative on the second pick. On the second pick, I said it, but I've seen other people do actual in-depth breakdowns of it since then. I felt like it was kind of a weird play call. Like, yeah, I know Shanahan was kind of a jerk to Matt Barrows after the game. Like, yeah, dagger's a common football play, but Matt Barrows
Mayoko, I
wasn't trying
think.
to
Was it
get you.
Mayoko or Barrows?
No, it was Barrows.
Oh, it was
Barrows wasn't trying to get him in that situation. He was just trying to gather information more about the play. And whatever Shanahan wants to say from running dagger from that condensed split made the spacing between Jennings and Ayuk very weird. Even though it's a common football play, the spacing between them was still weird. And then they had nothing underneath. The quarter's middle linebacker literally drops right back into his spot in zone coverage and looks up and, oh, look, there's the ball. Like, they did nothing to influence him. I think Purdy probably shouldn't throw that ball, but I don't know that it was the best play call in the quarters. It was kind of a weird play. But the first one, Larry, come on. He's got to know better. Once that play is dead,
the first one was a great
hand it off.
But I know what you're saying, but the first one I think was a great play by Pratt.
Oh, sure.
I think the second one was worse because the second one is late, over the middle, into a crowd with not a lot on it, just kind of throwing a 50-50 ball, expecting Juwan to go get it. Now, Brock throws a lot of balls like that, and that's the people who are critical of him say he throws a lot of interceptable passes or a lot of whatever the turnover worthy. But it's funny because Shanahan the next day said, well, he thought that the linebacker was going to clear the window, and then the linebacker peeled off and went with Jennings. But I just don't like late in the down, over the middle, not a lot on it, into a crowd, with all kinds of defenders hovering beneath. It was a very Jimmy Garoppolo reminder type interception. That one bothered me more.
100% it was. But the first one, come on, Larry. You can't throw that football. Regardless of whether Pratt makes a good play or not, the decision to throw was dumb. It's right. First and goal on the 8. You can't take a penalty there. You can't take a penalty there.
Yeah.
So first and goal on the 8, it was a terrible decision situationally. For me, that was the more egregious of the two picks. The second one, sometimes the way he plays, he tries to play with anticipation. He tries to play with instinct. He takes chances. He's very aggressive with how he throws the ball. Sometimes those kinds of interceptions are going to happen. The only reason I didn't feel like it was Jimmy Garoppolo Memorial, even though it looked like Jimmy Garoppolo, was because he just plays a lot more aggressive and instinctive than Jimmy. And that was indicative and seen with other throws over the middle of the field to kittle up the seam and stuff like that in that game. But the first one, dude, he can't throw that ball in any situation, regardless of the play Pratt makes. That was dumb.
So we're going to talk about Brock Purdy next, but let's get through these super chats. Then we'll have a whole discussion on Brock. Right. Brother Bob was waiting for Larry to show up and is now going to berate him and says that he was stalking Brock Purdy. And then he said that he was on a date with Brock Purdy at Pig and a Pickle. I think Larry would be ecstatic if Brock Purdy met him at Pig and a Pickle for a good little interview. I think he would enjoy that. Pig and a
Pickle would be ecstatic if Brock Purdy showed up at Pig and a Pickle.
I think so too.
Would you get Brock flowers, Drew?
What's that?
Would you get him flowers?
I would get him more than flowers. I'd probably get him a fifth of whiskey if he showed up at Pig and a Pickle. Say, bro, thank you for showing up. Now there's 700 people in line for brisket. Sure, here.
Matt says,
"Oh yeah, there will be more than 700, dude. Come
a lot of people.
Purdy, yeah. Oh yeah,
a lot of barbecue be selling that night."
Matt says NFL metrics created jobs. That's true. Brother Bob says this is better because I don't want to hear Purdy versus Herbert. Okay. Dazza says, "Is Brock Purdy?" I actually don't think you believe that in your heart. Now you're just rolling with it.
I'm taking Purdy.
Tazza says, is Brock Purdy best in air yards over 25 plus or passing yards? I don't know. Is Brock Purdy best in air yards? He's
asking about the stat that I threw out.
Yeah, what is this?
It's highest passer rating on throws 25 plus yards down the field.
Okay.
Nothing about air yards.
Okay. There you go. There's your answer. Jorge says, greetings from the 305, gents. 49ers will win no fewer than 12 games. No fewer. I like this. Okay, I like the optimism. And will beat the Eagles. Convince me otherwise. I don't want to.
By the way,
I just want to agree with you. Can we do that?
By the way, it wasn't that long ago that we were debating
undefeated.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
it was. Are they going to lose 3 games or are they going to go undefeated?
Yeah,
And
do you remember that?
And
I
I
did,
think most
yes.
of us went with undefeated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
here we are.
Shows how lofty we thought of them coming out of that Dallas game.
Right. And
But that's
I
how
still
good
think
they
they're
looked.
a good team.
That's how good they looked. It's been has it not felt like 2 different seasons already?
I feel that's like actually one of the takes I am embarrassed about. Actually, was that take
Me
that
too.
they would rather go because
I'm not.
The reality is that we all knew the Warren Sharp angle on the rest for Browns and Bengals, and we just kind of like looked at it and just kind of discounted it. And in reality, as somebody who I've done the quality control job and I've talked to NFL coaches about 1 day versus 2 days of extra prep, and they view extra day of prep as like major. So when you have 13 days and another team's on a short week, that's a huge advantage. And I should have factored that in.
Yeah, but
I
Cleveland
know the
had
way
a
they
ton of injuries, though, too, Larry. I mean, third string quarterback, Nick Chubb had gone down for the season. Their best offensive lineman was out. I don't think,
The
like I
equalizer
said,
in that game was the 2 quick injuries early, right? Because then you had
for
Trent
sure.
out, and you had who was it out?
Debo and Trent.
Debo out. Yeah. So
It's just when 3 losses is a lot when they had 5
rolling.
games in. So you're talking 12 more games, 9-3 when you started 5-0 and we're putting up 30 points every game. It's like, I struggled to find 3 losses here.
But I know, but here's the thing. We're all old enough to know NFL history. How many teams go 15 and 1?
Me old?
Well, no, but I mean,
old enough. You were born at night, but not last night, Vish.
How many one-loss teams in our lifetime? How many have there been? Can't be too many.
Steelers went 15-1.
Niners did it once, I think.
Niners did it.
Yeah.
Patriots went undefeated.
Yeah, they went
Vikings.
Yeah,
it's like less than
Vikings,
5.
98 Vikings or whatever.
Yeah. And so we all thought
Carolina went 15-1 with Cam Newton.
Yeah. Not a lot. Not a lot, though. Your point is not a lot. And I agree. It's not even 1 per season, so I get it.
Oh, Green Bay in 2011. Look at the chat.
There they go.
Through. Harris, shout out to him.
There we go. Brother Bob says, PP, did you tell Kerr that Purdy is better than him? B100.
We asked him what he thought of the Niner losing streak, and he's like, "Hey, they've lost 3 in a row. What do you think?" And he's like, "Hey, when we won one of our titles, we lost 6 in a row." So, of course, that's basketball.
That's basketball. Yeah. That's very different.
Yeah.
Brother Bob says, PP will call me Purdy hater because I won't crown him now.
You're a Purdy hater.
Oh, look at that. I like it. Fires right back.
I like it. Then he says, oh, shoot, what happened to that other one?
Is Brother Bob a system commentator, Larry?
Brother Bob doesn't even go by the same name. If you can't go by just Brother Bob, you got to change your name. That means you don't believe in your name enough. You got to have some pride in your name.
One went. He was saying something about Matt, and I'm sorry, Brother Bob. I don't know what the heck happened to that one.
Did you execute it?
I guess I must have. Dazza says, do you think we win the division? Jags, Eagles, Ravens are tough games, and we could split with the Seahawks. Here's the advantage that the 49ers have is as of right now. So if they finish with the same record, which is a big possibility, I do think Seattle loses this weekend, and the 49ers will then be number 1 again in the division. In the actual NFC West, Seattle has 1 loss in the first week of the season, and that 1 loss might be crucial in deciding this division. So I actually do think the 49ers will win the division. I do.
Niners are going to win the division. They're going to win.
I agree.
They're going to sweep. They're going to sweep the Seahawks.
Oh,
I
don't know
think
about
Seattle. I don't think Seattle. I don't know about sweeping Seattle, but I don't think Seattle's safe from their second matchup with either the Rams or the Cardinals. And by the way, Jesse, Brother Bob's super chat from Greenlaw, give me unsportsmanlike flag, Brother Bob. He says Matt Mick is right. Purdy thinks, or PP, referring to our good friend Larry Krueger, thinks Purdy greater than Curry. You think that?
No way.
It's way better than Curry.
Yeah, yeah, passing the football he is.
Way better than
I
Kerry.
agree. He's a better quarterback than Steph Curry. I would agree. Matt says, Brother Bob just saved me $2. Wait. And then he realized he spent $2 to say that. And then Brother Bob says, Matt, it's okay. Here's $2. I got you, brother. They're having a whole conversation through
You
Super
guys
Chat.
ought to just go spoon somewhere and leave the chat. You don't need us.
Ow.
Whoa,
man.
Sounds like you guys need an overnighter.
Kruger says, "Get
Golly.
a room."
Seriously,
Jeez.
you guys are making me sick right now.
Nee
Who's
says,
here? Why
only
don't you guys
Krug.
throw a super chat? Who's going to buy the freaking corsage?
Nee
to
says
know.
only Krug will likely care about a shout out to Bochy. 4 World Series, the GOAT. Miss him in San Francisco. That is actually very impressive. I could give 2 rips about baseball anymore, but Bochy is the man. He is the man.
Unbelievable. Get a. Here's my Bochy. I did an interview with him, and he's like, "Get a beer. Get a beer." That's my Bruce Bochy. How
I
you
don't know how
doing? How
Bruce
you
Bochy
sit
talks,
down?
so.
Sit down. Yeah, we can talk for a bit. Yeah, get a beer. Get yourself a beer.
Beast Mode says Brock Purdy will be is fine. Still Niners all the way. Stop the panic. And then Dazza says, so if Brock Purdy is the best at 25 plus yards, that includes 5-yard pass with CMC taking it to the house or Yak in general. It doesn't include Yak. I think it's passes thrown 25 air yards. Am I correct? 25 air yards or more?
25 yards down the field. It's not Yak.
Matt says it's not spooning. It's called pig in a pickle.
Wow.
How dare you? How dare you tarnish the great name of Pig in a Pickle with your man love for Brother Bob?
That's actually pretty dang funny. Okay, so there was 2 things that were the main topics this week. And before we get to Brock Purdy, which is, I mean, that's a topic every week, I feel like. There was a trade that happened this week, fellas. And my question to you is not did the 49ers win the trade? Because I think we can all agree a 3rd round compensatory pick for a talent such as Chase certainly is a win. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they won the trade deadline. Those are 2 different things. So, Vish, I'm going to ask you, do you think they won in general at the trade deadline? Why or why not?
No, I think they made the best individual trade at the trade deadline, but I still think they needed a secondary piece and they were unable to make that move. And therefore, I think Philadelphia won the trade deadline because they were able to fill a need with an excellent player in Kevin Byard. I think the secondary edge rusher on the other side of Bosa was a need, but I think Gregory was starting to cover that need. I think it was just about getting him more involved and getting him more snaps. He's clearly already more effective than both Drake Jackson and Cleveland Ferrell. I do think acquiring a player of Chase Young's talent at 24 years old for a compensatory pick that's likely going to be a wash if he walks, and giving yourself flexibility in terms of signing him is an outstanding move. It certainly makes the 49ers better. But again, I look at their secondary and I still think they're missing one player in the back end that they can trust as that 3rd cornerback. And that's where I think Philadelphia won the trade deadline because they had one kind of question mark on their defense and weakness on their football team. And they were able to fix that with a player who used to be an all-pro. I don't think he's an all-pro still, but he's still really good and he's a perfect fit for their system, especially with all the quarter, half, and quarters they play. He's a very good half-field safety, very good quarter safety.
Are we talking about just between the Niners and the Eagles, or are we talking about just across the board, every single team in the league?
I would say across
everybody.
You can take it.
You think the Chiefs
ways.
won it by getting Mecole Hardman back, Larry?
Well, no, but I mean, I want to look at the list here.
He's thinking Seattle with Leonard Williams.
I definitely like the fact that Seattle got Leonard Williams and Frank Clark.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're a whole lot better for sure. Buffalo did well, I think, too. I mean, Buffalo got Rasul Douglas and Leonard Fournette as a signing. That's pretty good. But I would probably lean towards the 49ers. One, because look at what teams pay for edge rushers and in free agency. And look what they're paying $1.4 million combined to Randy Gregory and Chase Young. So I think that's unbelievable. And then look what they gave up. Both deals were free. I mean, the Gregory deal is going to be the equivalent of trading a late sixth, or what was it, a late sixth for a high seventh or something like that, right? So
Yeah.
it's literally going to be like moving back 3 spots, and you got Denver to pay the money. So that's kind of that's almost like makes you wonder if John Lynch had some, what's going on there. I mean, why is Denver doing the Niners such a favor? And then this trade, there's nobody in the league that wanted Chase Young. Guy's got 5 sacks. He was the second pick in the draft. I mean, either the joke's on the Niners or the Niners paid nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. So, I mean, that's a win. The other thing I would say is, this was like, I had a conversation in July with Chris Kosaric, and I said to him, Chris, and I've said this to you guys a couple times, so forgive me if you're hearing this for the second or third time. I said, Chris, you have an awesome number 1 D line, but your backup line, not quite as good. You lost Ebukam and Amenahue and Willis and all these guys. I'm like, are you going to play your number 1 line more than your 2s and your 3s? And he's like, no. I'm going to do the same thing I've always done. I'm going to rotate my guys through. You know why? Because if my guys have to go 65, 70 snaps every game, they're not going to make it to the playoffs. And I said, okay. And I had, recorded it. You can watch it on my YouTube channel. Well, Nick Bosa against Cincinnati this week, I think, played 68 snaps. And he's played 60-plus snaps 4 times this year. The Ram game and then the last 3 games. So that's exactly what they've done. I basically called it in July. I'm like, dude, you're going to play your number 1 line more, or you're not going to get it done. And sure enough, as soon as there was a little pressure to win games, here comes Bosa for 68 snaps. The threshold that Chris himself said he couldn't be at without, not having any juice come the playoffs. So the Niners were in a desperate mode, even though they may not have. I don't know if that was what the rest of the league thought. But, I mean, the 49ers only have 5 sacks and 30 pressures in the last 3 games. So, that's not tremendous. And they were playing Bosa way more snaps than they planned to in July. So they had to make this move. So I think I'll take the Niners as the trade deadline winner, just from the standpoint of they were desperate, and yet they didn't pay desperate kinds of prices. If there were some of these other GMs were a little more savvy and studied the Niners situation, they probably could have held the Niners up for more and didn't. So I don't know if Lynch just is like the most popular guy in the GM meetings and everybody loves him, or what. But to me, to get Gregory and Young for nothing, that's and with the need being severe, that's huge, I think.
I think that the 49ers did great in both those trades individually. I just look at overall needs, and I would have preferred a corner. I do think that the asking price for corners was a lot higher probably than they expected. I definitely think that the 49ers did their due diligence and tried to get a corner. I really do believe that. But you have to weigh, future assets versus win now. How much of a need is it? How good is the player? Is their contract expiring? There's so many little nuances that go into it. You can't just trade to trade. So I think that they definitely kicked the tires on many corners, but it just didn't make sense for them. And the trade that ended up making sense was Young. And I love the trade. I really do. I gave that trade an A+. I think the other trade for Gregory was also a no-brainer. But because they didn't address, in my opinion, the most important position of need for this team on the defense, which is corner, certainly right tackle or right guard, I guess, but those are nearly impossible to get at the trade deadline, although the Jags did get a guard and beefed up their line. But overall, I thought corner was the most pressing need. They were unable to make that happen. So I don't think that they won, to whereas other teams like the Eagles, Vish, you pointed them out, Seattle, they not only got good players, but they also addressed a position of need. So I would slightly grade them better, but I think the 49ers kept up with the Joneses for sure.
I got to wait to see too. I mean, a lot of this is going to be predicated on on how or what the Niners get out of Womack and Luter. If Womack and Luter can't play dead, then the Niner grade goes down. I mean, the fact that they have those two guys on the roster, and I loved what I saw from Womack. I mean, Jesse, you were out there this summer. I don't know if you saw Womack the days you were there, but Womack, in my mind, looked phenomenal. He looked as good as Lenore looked as far as improvement from last year to this year. So I'm expecting Womack to play right away. In fact, I'd almost guarantee that he's better than Oliver, or the Niners are better with Oliver sitting and Womack outside and Lenore inside. And then Luter's the wild card because, he played for the South Alabama Jags or whatever. And I asked him in minicamp, I said, how do they utilize you? And he's like, solely, I mean, think about this. So usually you get used in a bunch of variety of ways, little zone, little off, little press man. He's like, I played exclusively press man. And when you watch his highlight reel, sure enough, I mean, they're playing cloud on the weak side. He's playing press man hugged up on the receivers. They need right now a big, long arm, dominant press man corner who can snuff out, players and play man to man. And they got a guy right there who should be able to do it. So I'm eager to see what that looks like. And hopefully he gets on the field and makes an impact.
I'm a little bit more skeptical. Let's start with the Womack one. I, like you, am high on Womack. I remember telling the two of you that I thought the corner trio this year would be Demo Lenore, Sam Womack, and Charvarius Ward. I was wrong. But I don't know how Sam Womack is going to come back and play immediately when he only got injured of week 2 of this year. He played week 1. He played like 20 snaps on special teams and 9 snaps on defense. He didn't play in front of Ambry Thomas, who was awful in that game, and he didn't play in front of Isaiah Oliver, who came in relief for Ambry Thomas, who was awful in front of that game. And then he got injured. It's hard for me to see him passing them up when he didn't pass them up over throughout the entirety of preseason or camp and didn't play above them in week 1, and both of them did not play very well.
Yeah, but you're assuming that that's on merit. I really think that has to do with the fact that the Niners made an expenditure in free agency, and they didn't want to admit. I mean, if it was based
but they benched that expenditure for Ambry Thomas.
But I mean, if it was based on performance, in my mind, and I think I know what the hell I'm watching, I felt Deshaun Jameson outplayed Oliver all summer and in the preseason. But Oliver is on the team, and Ambry and Jameson was cut. So sometimes, there's other reasons. Sometimes GMs and front offices don't like to admit to their owner that, hey man, we spent millions of dollars of your money for no good reason. And so I'm not sure that Oliver's better just because he played.
But I'm not saying he's better. But this idea that the Niners brass is somehow high on Womack where they're going to start him. Last year, they made him the nickel starter. He was the one starter that got benched after the catastrophic monsoon loss versus the Bears, and he got benched because of practice performance to Diamador Lenore. He was not seen playing again basically outside of special teams for the rest of his rookie year, which is natural. He's a rookie player. And then this year he came in, he didn't play nickel, which was what he was drafted to play and what he was starting at last year. He played exclusively on the outside. And he was started in front of by both Ambry Thomas and Isaiah Oliver, who frankly are not very good. And he might be better than them. But right now, the Niners brass has shown no faith for us to sit here and think, well, they're going to bring him back and start him. Because at every juncture, they've chose other players to play over him. And then in regards to Luter, I like the talent, but it's hard for me to be optimistic about what 5th-round corner have I ever heard of that's missed the entirety of an offseason and comes in halfway through the year and he's going to make an immediate impact, especially, first of all, starting with corner, a position where typically it's the higher round picks that are the best players at that position because corner has a physical requirement to play the position, right? The best corners have speed. You need certain amount of speed to play outside corner in the NFL because as good as you can be with everything, if you can get run by a receiver on any given play, it's hard to play corner on the outside. It's a requisite skill. You need speed to play outside. And because of that, it's hard for me to be optimistic and realistic that, hey, Luter might be a good player, but without an entire offseason, he's now going to come in the middle of the season for a Super Bowl contender. One, have the defense down without many reps to the discipline where he can execute his role correctly, but then two, be physically returned to performance and be strong enough as a rookie to be able to compete and play on the outside as a 5th-round pick on the NFL. That seems like a monumental task for him. I don't know that that's realistic either. So I'm not so
But
high.
he does run fast. I mean, and his 40 time was 4.46. This is a great athlete. This guy had a 1.57 10-yard split. He had a 40.5-inch vert. So we're at a 6.93 cone. He's a really good athlete, and he's mature. He's a married guy with kids, and he's played a lot of football at South Alabama. So we're also talking about a guy who's 6 feet, 190 pounds, with 33-inch arms and
Super
10 and
long
3.
arms.
Yeah, huge hands, huge long arms. 6-foot corner. You're right, Vish. As far as it's a projection, but these two guys are there. I mean, they're, I don't want to say they're the only hope, but they're the primary hope, because these guys, I guarantee you, are better than anybody on the beach right now. They're not going to be able to sign anybody off the street that's going to be better.
Oh,
than
that
these
I
guys.
fully agree. Fully
Yeah.
agree. Fully.
So I mean, we better hope they're good, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we'll see. You're right, though. I mean, it's a little bit of a stab in the dark on both. But I will say this too about Womack. Womack is an interesting guy. He was a walk-on at Toledo that became all conference. I mean, there aren't. I mean, I don't know more than a handful of guys that I can think of that got into the walk-on status when they came to college and walked off as all conference players. Now it is the MAC, it's not the ACC or the SEC, but still, it's a hell of a
football.
We'll see. We'll see what the
issue I have with Luter is less about Luter himself, but more about the 49ers and what they do schematically. I mean, the 49ers, it seems like for the last 3 years, every corner they've added to this team is supposed to be a press man corner, yet they don't play press man. It baffles me. They put these guys in constant soft coverages, playing off the line of scrimmage. Very rarely are they in a press man situation, but when you look across the board, that's what these guys were brought in to do. That's what Ambry Thomas was supposed to be. That's what Lenore was supposed to be. That's what Charvarius Ward did well at in Kansas City. It's like, at what point do you keep bringing these guys in to play a certain role and then actually allow them to play the role that they were supposed to play? I don't understand it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Richard Sherman is arguing, I would tend to agree with him, that they play too much man coverage on early downs, and that's been the problem with their fits. Now, they do play man coverage from
He
off.
also said that they're stunting a lot. I'm not seeing that. Am I missing something?
Yeah, the stunting, I don't know. And then he said they're not mugging up the fronts, which I do see them mugging it up. Now, they mug it up and bring pressure probably more than they mugged it up and dropped out of it than before, because really the mugging up was just to create one-on-ones because they wanted to dictate where protection was getting slid. But in terms of the man coverage, I mean, the best example I can give you is the Joe Mixon touchdown run to ice the game. The run play is duo, I'm pretty sure, and he bounces it outside. And it's typical crack replace in man coverage for Diamador Lenore. The receiver, Trenton Irwin, cracks down on Bosa. He becomes the force player on the outside, and he gets lost inside. Mixon bounces duo all the way outside. It's a terrific run, and there's no player there to contain the edge because Bosa gets cracked. So it's little things like that. But ultimately, the one thing I'll say in regards to what you said and in regards to what he said and all of that, we can say, oh, they're playing too much man, they're playing too much press man, they're doing this, they're doing that. And I think that there's validity to all of it. And I think if we're giving a blame share piece to this, or we're giving a piece of the pie in terms of blame, the highest share will go to Steve Wilks, like you mentioned, just because schematically they don't seem to be doing the best stuff for any of their personnel, like you described. But the players are also not playing too well the last couple of weeks. Like the Fred Warners has not played as well as he's capable of playing, right? The Mooney Ward, some of these players. Javon Hargrave has been ghost town. Dre Greenlaw looks banged up and beaten. So they need those guys to play better as well. And I hope Steve Wilks calls a game that's more comfortable for them to enable that. But I agree with you that schematically, like they seem to be sometimes in press man, and then sometimes they seem to now become this complete two-shell soft zone team. It's like almost either or, right? Like the Dallas game, they were in press man for so much of that game, which was weird. And then you go to the Cleveland game or the Minnesota game, and the entire first half, they're almost playing soft zone coverage. So it's a weird balance of how they're mixing it up, or maybe they're not really mixing it up. I don't know, but there doesn't seem to be a sync in terms of how the players seem to be playing and what's being called.
The other thing, guys, I think is something that I'm looking for, and I don't know if you guys already hit on it before I got in here, but Shanahan, the one thing I do like about Shanahan, now some people think that Shanahan lies all the time. I think Shanahan's a terrible liar. I think he's
I agree with that.
I agree. I think he's always telling us the truth.
I think he tells the truth more times than not. And that's why he said, Steve knows he messed up, because that's what he meant to say. He messed up, right? And on this week, the thing that jumped out to me was that he's like, he watched the film. Now, he's not the kind of guy that's going to be super critical at the podium in the post game. Like some guys are really critical in the post game at the podium. As CMC said, he's like, Kyle coaches off the film, and he'll watch the film, and then he brings the heat, right? Well, what did he say after he watched the film? He said, my team looks tired and slow. Well, you guys know that the bye week will probably alleviate the tired, but slow is slow. And I'm eager to see what the changes are that give them more speed. And I don't know if he was talking on the offensive side of the ball or the defensive side of the ball. I'm not really even sure. Was he talking about the D? Was he talking about his O? I thought there was some talk that maybe they would. I thought Paris Campbell might be a guy that they would try to get at the trade deadline, just because he is so fast and seems like he would be a great fit in the Niners system. But they didn't make the trade there. There was talk about Adoree Jackson. Lynch denied that they were interested, but he's plenty fast. I'm just kind of wondering if without a trade, where's this extra speed coming from? And
Deebo Samuel's return, right?
Is it Deebo? Is it Danny Gray? I'll tell you one thing I would personally like to see is if it's not Danny Gray, I'd like to see JP Mason put on the field at running back, and I'd like to see CMC flexed out as a receiver and see what that looks like. See if you get a little bit more speed there, and maybe Jair Brown instead of one of those two safeties. Maybe a little bit, maybe Womack instead of Oliver. But I mean, they gotta. I mean, I don't know if you saw Steve Smith talking about Oliver this week, but he just buried Oliver and said that he felt like Oliver was almost all their problems. So Oliver did make a lot of plays in that Bengal game, but he also got roasted by T. Higgins.
Who said that? Sorry,
Steve Smith. He said that, he felt like Oliver was being picked on. And my son put out that tweet that in the last 3 games, Oliver's given up 100% completion percentage to like 5 different receivers. So I don't know. I don't know. But that to me is like,
he does Oliver look like he can run with anybody to you in terms of if he
I don't think he can run with anybody, and he doesn't look like he's got the ability to change direction and mirror anybody who's got multiple move ability.
He almost would be a candidate to convert to safety.
Yeah.
Right? Like the way
maybe but he doesn't have the hips to play safety.
And he's not a hitter.
Yeah.
In terms of tackling, by the way,
I agree with that too.
He's improved, and he's good when he's close enough, when he's able to make contact with the guy, he brings the guy down. But in terms of actually efficiently closing space and taking a smart angle, there are tackles that he should make that he doesn't even attempt because he's not in the correct position to make the tackle. And then it doesn't go down as a missed tackle. You don't realize it, but he can make the play. I do think, though, he played okay in the Minnesota game. I'll say that. The Cincinnati game, a little problematic. But the Minnesota game, I do think he played okay relative to the rest of the defense, especially given that I've been basically one of his biggest critics since the day he was signed. So I feel like a hater of him a little bit.
Well, I have to say I have a source with the team, and, I have it on good accord, Larry, that when he said my team looks slow, he was actually referring to the media members. So Just kidding. All right.
Specifically a former scout in a Maryland shirt.
Yeah.
He
He
loved
didn't
that.
name
He loved
names
that
or
Grant
anything,
Cohn
but
question.
he was
Yeah.
pretty clear. Yeah.
He really
Well,
loved that.
I mean,
Grant's
I heard that
slow-footed
Grant
is what he
Cohn
said.
character runs a 4.5 40 and is faster than Richard Sherman.
He seemed kind of slow in his answer to Grant's question, to be honest.
Yeah, he did. He was tripped up. Cosmo says, what was Womack's injury? It was a knee injury. I don't know the
It
details.
was like some
meniscus, wasn't it?
Was it meniscus?
Was
I
it
don't know.
meniscus? I thought it was
I
some
thought it was meniscus.
met something.
Matt says, my chats keep timing out. They do. They'll time out in there, but I don't lose them. I still have them. T Breezy says, Larry, why you never call Kyle Shanahan out for saying that Sam Darnold outplayed Trey Lance in camp and preseason? I love you guys though, Team Trey Lance. You know what? That's actually, I don't care to rehash it, but I never got that narrative. It just like seemed like it flipped all of a sudden. As soon as Shanahan said it was so, it was like everybody in agreement was like, yep, nope, he played better. And I was like, every day you guys reported on every single day. I'm not saying you, Larry, by the way, I don't even remember what your stance was, but even other guys, Lombardi and whatever, talked about how it was the best camp and how he looked so good and all these other things. And then all of a sudden, as soon as they said, hey, Darnold outplayed him, it was like everybody just fell in line and was like, yep, he outplayed him. I was like, that's not what you guys said day in and day out. But
I personally didn't. Okay. I felt like Brock threw the most picks in camp, but do you care about camp picks?
Well,
I
let's
care
take
about
Brock out of it. This is a Trey Lance, Sam Darnold thing. Let's take Brock out of it.
My whole thing is
because Brock was going to be the starter, right? He was going to be the
Brock
starter.
moved the ball in the live, you know, when you're trying to move the ball live.
Yeah.
He moved the ball the best.
Yep.
The other two guys, I thought Lance looked better than Darnold, but it wasn't by a wide margin. Trey had days. Darnold had days. Darnold threw the days where Darnold looked good, he looked very good. The days that Lance looked good, he looked very good. From what I could recall, Lance had the same problems he had last year, which were the real easy under the stuff underneath that you got to complete the layups. He didn't make all the layups, where Darnold made many more of the layups. I just wasn't offended when they said that Darnold outplayed Lance, because it wasn't like, oh my God, there's no way in hell. No, it wasn't that. It was very, 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 very close. I personally felt like Lance outplayed Darnold, but I'm not in the meetings. I'm not. And let's be honest, we're only there for part of it. We're not there for all of it. So I don't know. There's a whole picture that goes into your development, and sometimes it's your answers in the meetings. Sometimes it's your observations in the meetings. It's not just all on the field in training camp. So I don't know. I wasn't in any of the meetings, and I didn't hear anybody's answers. So for all I know, they asked Trey Lance a million questions about football, and he got every single one wrong. I mean, I don't know because I wasn't there. But I thought Lance played a little bit better than Darnold. But I wasn't offended when they said Darnold played better.
So two things. One, Sambo McTour's MCL, medial collateral ligament.
Yeah, MCL,
I worked a lot of hours today. Okay, that's my excuse for reading that. How I read that, I don't know why my brain read medial collateral ligament and thought meta something, whatever. That's on me.
So maybe he's not coming back.
No, he is coming back, but he that was the injury. And then the second thing in regard to this, obviously I wasn't at training camp. I don't know what went on there. I could only go off of what other people were talking about. But I did watch the preseason. And my takeaways watching the preseason was obviously that Lance was the higher upside prospect and he made more plays than Darnold. But even after the first preseason game, I said, I think that they have to trade him because I don't know that he makes sense as a backup. And it's not because Lance and Darnold outplayed each other, or it's not because Darnold specifically outplayed Lance as an individual. I think he outplayed Lance in terms of proving that Shanahan can have a little more faith in him to be the backup. I think that's what it came down to. The thing with Lance is specifically in the preseason, which is the only thing I can speak to. Some of his bad plays were the kind of plays that I feel like a coach, if you're talking about a backup quarterback in a pinch, the guy has to come in and he's missing this play. I think that would scare a coach versus Darnold, the veteran, who didn't do as many good things as Lance did, but he's not going to be scared about him messing up the little things if he has to come in a pinch. So I think part of that has been that this conversation has been a little bit misrepresented, because I think Lance's work was always cut down. His work was always cut out for him once it became a competition for a backup job, because Darnold's experience was always going to win out in that case, because Lance just hadn't had enough reps to iron out some of the fundamental things that Darnold's had 55 games to do. It's not about good or better in this case. It's just about more comfortable to be the backup to Brock. And I think that's what that ended up being. But I do think the sell job was then we gave this guy guaranteed money. We brought him in to be the backup. So you're not going to sell it as, oh, the guy we drafted was actually better, but we kept the worst guy because he's the right backup for the team, right? There's never going to be a sales job that way. So
I expected Lance to be traded, because all the indications were that he was going to be traded. And I said it from March or from February on, and I still expected him to be traded this summer. And I didn't really think that there was a legitimate competition. So I wasn't really looking at the competition. I mean, it's just like anything else. If the three of us are all competing for something, and you two guys were just hired, and I'm been there, who's going to most likely get cut? It's probably going to be me, right? Because you guys were just hired. So I never really thought Darnold was going to get cut, because they had just signed Darnold and they handpicked him. And obviously they said something to him. They signed on the first day of free agency. And it's like they obviously promised him some situation. I didn't look at that as a real competition, to be completely honest. I never
Not
really
even the
did.
first official day, during the legal tampering period.
Right. They wanted him. The only way Lance was going to beat him out was if Lance was way better than him. And I would say Lance was not way better than him. Was Lance better than him? I thought he was. I really did. Way better? No. And way better was what it was going to take.
Here's a fun exercise. Since Larry just brought all three of us up in competition, why don't you in the chat tell us which one of us is which quarterback? So Sam Darnold, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy. Throw it in the chat. I think it'll be a funny little thing to do. I'm curious to see who you guys say we each are. All right.
Krug, I think you're Trey Lance.
I am Trey Lance.
His upside is really good.
I've got the best upside. Eventually, I'm going to be on top.
I made the Trey Lance comparison for a different reason. If you can figure that one out, you will realize that it's a terrible joke on my part. But yeah.
All right. Brother Bob says, Matt, I was going to say that. I don't know what he's talking about. Brother Bob says, PP and Jelly, be real. You love Purdy more than your real son. Wow. If you could adopt Purdy.
That's not my real son. That's not my real son.
That's not my perfect.
Right. Well, I mean, you did call poor Kevin a system son.
I will say this. My 14-year-old, I told my 14-year-old last year in the preseason, this guy's the real deal. And we watched preseason together, and he's like, Dad, you're right.
Are you talking about Kevin?
No, I'm talking about my 14-year-old.
That's his Mahomes. That's his Mahomes. Kevin's his Alex Smith right now. He's got Mahomes in the back.
He's just older. The youngest one is the real talent. And he said, Dad, I see it. I see what you see. He's like, you're right. Purdy is the real deal. This was last year in the preseason. So my 14-year-old's the real star.
He sees it.
Matt says bad coverage equals pressure. Pressures, great coverage equals sacks. I agree with that. Crow says, would having the interior D lineman be in the 4-point stance help against the run? I mean, I don't think that's going to matter so much, but do you think that makes a difference, Larry or Vish?
As opposed to a 3-point stance?
Yeah, I guess.
What is it? What is this? Remember the Titans or something? What the fuck are we talking about?
I
do you have to insult the man?
Yeah,
Jeez,
I
asking a question.
I think it's an interesting question. I'm
going to get in a
don't know the
4-point
answer. I need
stance
to
on this
do a
show
little-
right now. I'm going to get down.
Sounds like it. Jeez. Goodness sakes. I got to get in. I got to see what they're saying, who each quarterback we guys are. Larry Krueger's Hoyer, they said.
Wow.
I'm probably taller than
Wow.
Hoyer.
Yeah. Larry is Rivers, Vish is Trey, Larry is Brock Purdy, Larry's Hoyer. That's two people that said Larry's Hoyer. That's interesting. I need 5 more years to develop. That's
Wow.
probably.
No, vicious Nick Mullins, brutal. Jeez.
Larry's. You guys can't even take. Oh, there we go.
Whoa.
There's a throwback. Pickett
Ooh,
equals
Pickett.
Vish.
That one I have to take. Hey, my
Hey,
guy,
what
my guy.
what
Another
happened today?
game-winning drive today. Another
hap-
game-winning drive from my guy.
From
I
Kenny
bet the
Two
Steelers.
Gloves,
I bet
man.
the Steelers -3. Are they going to cover?
Oh, yeah. They won by 4. I mean, that's the most
It's over?
sweaty Steelers game of all time. Yeah.
Jesus, I'll tell you, man. That right there tells you don't wager on the NFL. The spread was 3, and they win by 4.
Yeah.
I mean, everything's a freaking nail biter in the NFL.
Randy said that you're Jim Druckenmiller, Larry.
Oh.
So you know.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm gonna strap a VW bus. I'm gonna walk uphill.
I
Did I ever tell you my Jim Druckenmiller? Did I ever tell you my Jim Druckenmiller story?
Mm-mm.
No.
So I go to do an interview with him in the locker room. This is in the 90s, whatever year it was, 98 or something
Featured
like that.
in the Brady 6, by the way.
And I'm like,
Brady
Jim,
5.
man, you got time to talk for a minute? Larry Krueger, I do the pregame on CanBR. You got time? And he's like, dude, oh, bro, dude, Walsh is up my ass. Dude, I can't find my playbook, dude. And JJ Stokes, or I forget who it was. I think it was JJ Stokes, looked at me like, this guy's a freaking bum. You know, it was like, and I'm sitting there and I looked over at this other media guy, and we had done the Steve Young, we'd been talking to Steve Young. We knew they had Joe Montana, and then it was this guy. And I'm like, oh my God, dude, this is their guy. And he's like, dude, I can't believe they drafted such an idiot. This guy sounds like such an idiot. And it was like, dude, Walsh. Right then and there, I was just like, oh my God, this is not going to end well.
That is funny. Yeah, I saw that, Vish. I saw that. Let's see. I've been out for a while. Jim Drunk on Miller. That's good. That's great. All right, let's get to the rest of the super chats here. Jorge says, Debo will save the season. Just watch. I know that he may have earned a bad rap because of his pseudo holdout, but the way that he fought in the NFC Championship versus the Rams and how much it hurt him. I actually made this comment on Grant's channel that he's the one that needs to step up, and I feel like he can have that type of impact on this team again. I love it. And Josh says, love the Young trade. Funny, though, you guys say F them picks. Who cares about the comp third? Throw it away for 9 games worth of Young, but use it to draft a kicker, and it's worst use of the comp third pick of all time. Hold on. I don't think it's throwing it away when you're bringing in a potential elite young pass rusher for 9 games, and it is a rental, it seems. However, maybe they sign him for another year or long term. We'll see how that goes. But, I mean, a kicker?
Well, how about the Camla 2 pick?
Right. Their
I
draft class right now is really not contributing much at all.
No.
They're not getting anything out of
No.
it. Though I do think Jalen Graham's a real player. But
I do too.
the weird thing on the picks is that my philosophy is this: if you're like Rand Carthon and you are, it's year 1, you're building up your program, then don't trade picks for players. But if you're inside your Super Bowl window, absolutely trade picks for players, because there's a failure rate on the picks. If 3/3 doesn't get you 3 players, it probably gets you 2 players and 1 swing and a miss, right? That's just kind of the nature.
Lucky.
If you're lucky. Yeah, if you're lucky. So especially if, you drafted Akella Witherspoon in the 3rd round. You drafted Trey Sermon in the 3rd round. You've drafted some donkeys in the 3rd round. Get players, and that's what Les Snead did with the Rams. They went and got Von Miller because then at least for sure you're getting actual players that can play for your assets. And I think that's the route to go. I think it's both safer and smarter, I think, if you're inside your Super Bowl window.
I don't think that made a lot of sense because the value doesn't make sense, right? Kickers typically a value of a third round pick for a kicker is rich. Typically, kickers aren't using that high of an asset to get. And then getting a 24-year-old edge rusher, whether it's for 9 games or not, with the talent of Chase Young, and knowing that you can get a compensatory pick in return, that typically doesn't happen either. So I don't know that the value comparison is the exact same. I kind of understand what he's saying. He's like, oh, drafting a kicker, a long-term player, perhaps for your franchise versus a 9-game rental. But we have to take in the positional value and the talent. Right. One, it doesn't have to be a rental, you're right. But even if he is a rental, we have to take into account the positional value and the talent of the player, right? Like Chase Young is a guy that when he's living up to his talent, when he's fully healthy and all of that, we regard as worth a first-round pick. There's a second pick in the draft, for Pete's sake. Jake Moody, any kicker is never at their highest value. They're probably going to be still worth the exact third-round pick. If Jake Moody is the best possible kicker that he can be, he will still be worth the third-round pick the 49ers traded for him. And if he's not the best possible kicker, like in terms of like he's not a great kicker and he doesn't play for 10 years, then he's not worth the third-round pick the 49ers trade for him.
By the way,
all Chase Young has to do is get a big contract next year. His production doesn't matter to be worth the third-round pick the Niners get him because they get the comp pick right back. So there's a massive difference when we're comparing the value of those two things.
On the kicker front, by the way, you saw Robbie Gould worked out for the Giants, but they didn't go that direction.
No.
I did not see that.
Robbie is still asking for money, dude.
Supposedly they worked him out with 3 different kickers and went with one of the others.
Yeah, but money, I agree with Vish. It would be money-wise. No, I haven't really paid attention about the comings and goings of Robbie Gould so much, but
that was the story today.
No, I didn't catch it. Brother Bob says, Larry, do you recall when you said Purdy does not push the ball downfield and needs a gadget running back? Isn't that dink and dunk?
That's not what I said. It was the middle of a Grant stream. And I said that he would, in an ideal world, you wouldn't be without both CMC and Debo. And you've been gravitating towards this little statement for like 3 fucking weeks, bro.
It sounds like that's not what you said, Larry.
It's not what I said. Grant made a statement and was moving fast. And I just said, you don't want to have in a situation where you have a quarterback that is throwing the ball short, like Purdy likes to throw the ball short. That you don't, it's not ideal to be without Debo and CMC. But I didn't say he was a dink and dunk guy. That was somebody else.
Brother Bob says, how the heck do you throw an interception to a linebacker 1 yard in front of you? Gammon says, how much more difficult did the jackhammer situation make it for current and future people who cover the 49ers to get media press passes? I think it's already pretty difficult to get press passes with the 49ers. I don't know. I don't know that adds to it or doesn't. I think that if anything, that the Press Democrat probably vets their, I guess, freelance workers a little bit better. I'm not sure. Nick says,
old media has kind of a stranglehold on the credentials, which is wrong, I think. Personally, as somebody who's worked in old media, when I say old media, I'm talking about traditional media like newspapers and radio and television are oftentimes can get credentials where content creators and YouTube people can't get credentials, or it's very difficult to get credentials. And I think they ought to reassess the entire thing, to be honest. I think they ought to look, because let's be honest, if you're writing for some, Reno Gazette, the circulation could be, the 3 of us and, 2 other people. And if you have a channel, you could be talking to, 90,000 people. And to me, the credentials should be tied to the people who talk to a large amount of people. I mean, that just makes sense. So I think it's time for the teams to adjust a little bit. And also, let's be honest, some of these newspapers that they're so streamlined, if you want to call it that, or stripped away, if you want to call it that, that they don't really have the manpower to effectively screen any of their people. They're just trying to keep the lights on. They're in a situation where they're really hurting for revenue. The last thing they have is, time to go do the things that they need to do to make sure that they're having the kinds of people representing them that they should have. So I personally think that teams ought to take a real hard look and say, who is every person who's covering us? Who are they speaking to? What's the impact of that? And get the people that speak to the most people and make sure that they have credentials, regardless of if they're YouTube people. I mean, Jesse talks to a lot of people. Vish talks to a lot of people. They don't work for the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, but I guarantee you they talk to more 49er fans than many, many people at newspapers and old media. So shouldn't they have credentials? I think the whole thing should be reassessed. I really do.
Well, and what's interesting to me is the NFL is much easier to get credentialed for than individual teams. I'll give you an example. If I want to go to the Senior Bowl, Super Bowl Media Week, or the draft, I can do that. Very, very easy. If you've got a platform, they'll credential you. But if I want to get credentialed for an individual team, it's very, very hard to do. And that's kind of interesting to me. So I don't know, whatever. I mean, it is what it is. I live in Florida, so if I got credentialed, it'd be for like a couple times a year anyways. So I'm not really too worried about it. Plus, I got to be honest with you. I don't ever want to be first of all, I don't want to be a journalist. That's one. Number two, I don't want to be in a position where I feel like I have to acquiesce to the team or compromise my actual opinions because I'm worried about what the team might think. So I would prefer not to be credentialed. And I'm fine with that. Nick says, what is everyone's take on BA? Well, that's a loaded question.
He had a great summer. He had a great summer. We're talking about Ayuk. He had a great summer. I thought he was ready to lift off, and he has not lifted off. And last week, he had a ball hit him in the face mask.
I thought he was outstanding last week besides that one ball. Me and Rob Guerrera actually argued about it last Monday because I didn't watch the game live. I was in Jersey getting some coffee at the corner. So I was hanging out there, Krug. You seem a little stunned that I was in Jersey. But yeah, I was in Jersey.
I'm so used to you with your international travel, and Jersey seems so mundane for a man of your worldly travels. Jersey, come on.
It'll be a little more spectacular for you.
You'd be in like Barcelona or someplace,
maybe next time. Maybe next time. But the point is, I didn't watch the game live, and I understood the magnitude of the drop, and it was a big play. Those are the kind of plays I feel like in his career till now he just doesn't come down with to make that next step and really elevate himself. But overall, I think you're right. He had an outstanding camp. I think he's had a terrific season. I really think he's had a terrific season.
Season?
He didn't make that catch versus Cincinnati, but he was good.
You think he's had a terrific season?
Brandon Ayuk, yes.
Really?
Yes.
I'm shocked by that. Let's go to the game log.
I think he has the most separation in the league out of all receivers too.
Well, he's the only Niner that gets separation. Yeah. But the receiver that I saw this summer, I thought was going to just absolutely dominate. And he's got 300-yard days, which is nice. But he's also got three games where he didn't even have 60 yards. He's only had one game where he's only had one game all year where he scored a touchdown receiving.
He's been targeted 52 times this year. He's catching nearly 70% of his targets.
You're saying he's having what was the word you used?
Yeah, but he's on pace for like 1,300 yards. And
Jerry Rice scored 23 touchdowns in a season. This guy has 2.
That was historic. That was monumental. That's arguably the greatest season in NFL history.
Yeah, but there's more people on the stream than he has touchdowns. I can't say terrific. I mean,
There's a lot of people on the stream. It's a popular show.
I like Ayuk, and I think he's their best weapon. And I'll say this, I think he's the only receiver they have that consistently gets any separation. But 300-yard days, 8 games in with 2 touchdowns is not what I thought we were going to be talking about. I thought this guy would have 500-yard days and 7 touchdowns.
But he was banged up in the Rams game, right? And then he didn't
play
he
missed the next
Giants game, right? So
exactly.
he's basically played in the Ram
6 game.
games.
Yeah, he did.
Was in and out of the lineup.
He played like Debo played in the Arizona game, which is he didn't really play.
I just think they've underutilized him. He's only had 10 targets one time all year.
52 targets this year. He's catching nearly 70% of his targets. His efficiency,
they're not targeting
for the number
him enough.
of targets he's had in terms of averaging 18 yards a catch, 35 catches, I think, for 620 yards. Yes, the touchdowns need to increase, and he's had 2 drops, right? The post versus Cleveland, you've got to catch it, and then the one that hit him against in the face mask versus Cincinnati, like you got to catch those. But all the top receivers have drops. I think the 2 things with Ayuk are, 1, he chooses to have drops in the wrong moments that we really remember it. It's like, yes, that's Brandon Ayuk's moment. If he makes that catch, he shows everybody the number 1 wide receiver he is, and he just doesn't make that catch. But then 2, he gets targeted so less that his drops actually stand out more to us. I mean, 52 targets for a guy that's catching nearly 70% of his targets for 18 yards a catch. I think he's having
it doesn't change the fact that next time the Niners play, he will have not scored a touchdown in over 2 months. If you told me this summer,
but there's only one player on this offense that scores touchdowns, Larry.
Well, but I mean, he had the kind of summer that told me this guy's going to be awesome. He has not been awesome. He's fine. Don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not like he's not the reason they are losing or anything. I think he's their best receiver, but I can't say terrific when I really thought he would have 12 touchdowns at least this year. He's on pace for 4.
He's on pace for 1,300 yards receiving, averaging
1,400
points. Yeah,
Larry, I mean 1,400 yards.
Yeah,
because you're doing it by 8 games. If you do it by 7 and times it, make it 16 games. He's on pace for 1,400 yards. I know. So take his yards, divide it by 7, and then multiply that by 16. I think it comes out to 1,400 yards. That's a ton.
I just thought he was going to have
discounting. Okay.
I mean, it's like, it's kind of like asking the question, is somebody overrated or underrated? It's all based on where they're rated, right? So my opinion of BA in the year he's had is all based on what I thought we were going to see. And I thought
what did you think we were going to see? Justin Jefferson?
I thought we were going to see 10 to 12 touchdowns. He's got 2. He hasn't scored a touchdown in 6 weeks.
He's got to be targeted too. Can't throw himself the ball.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying. Well, your targets also have to do with, are you getting open? I like the separation I've seen when he has been targeted, but I got to assume that he's not being targeted more in other situations because he's not as open. I'm not pleased with that production. I want way more production.
I don't know about the Cincinnati game. I think the Minnesota game was a little bit tough because they employed a lot of different man coverage techniques to double him, and they took him away from that game a little bit. And then the Cleveland game, I think the entire team got punked a little bit. And Denzel Ward was a little physical with Brandon Ayuk, and it threw him off his game. Same with Martin Anderson. They were a little physical with the Niners receivers. They didn't really like that. But I thought the Cincinnati game looked like Brandon Ayuk versus Pittsburgh, looked like Brandon Ayuk versus Arizona. He looked awesome to me outside of the one drop. I don't know,
man. The guy's got 300 yards.
Let me ask you
300 yard days, and this last game was he's nowhere near 100 yards until garbage time, man. Garbage time.
But Larry, if you're gonna say, well, he was nowhere near 100 yards for near garbage time, didn't you think Purdy played awesome for the first majority of that game? He was nowhere near 300 yards until they were down multiple scores in that game.
Yeah, I that's what I said. I said in the post game, I said it 5 different times. Throw out this box score. The box score is not worth anything. You can wipe your ass with that box score. I mean, the defense played terrible. Purdy's numbers were inflated. Ayuk's numbers were inflated. Everybody's numbers were inflated in that game. by the garbage time.
Well,
stuff
I
at the
agree.
end.
If your argument is that they got dominated versus Cincinnati, yeah,
My argument is that I
got
thought
their butt kicked versus
I thought
Cincinnati.
I thought Ayuk was going to score. If you had asked me this summer, what do you think he's going to catch? I would say he's going to catch about 7 to 12 touchdowns. He's got 2. I'm very
He still might
disappointed.
catch 7.
Yeah.
Right now, he's 10th in the league in receiving yards, and 5 of the people ahead of him have played one more game than he has.
Yeah, I just thought more touchdowns. I mean, he's this has got
I
to be
don't
your
know.
guy, man. I mean,
You know,
this is the other thing,
Julio
too.
Julio was not a big touchdown guy either, and I thought he was pretty good, but maybe not. Maybe he was overrated.
I'm not saying this
too.
guy's terrible. but
Andre
I would-
Johnson wasn't either, by the way.
in the summer, he attacked every ball like it was the low ball, the high ball. I mean, Jesse, you saw it. He
Yeah.
was amazing this summer. And so was McCaffrey. But then the season started, and McCaffrey's, still like on this MVP trajectory, and Ayuk's got 2 touchdowns, and it's almost Thanksgiving.
Yeah, but you're only focusing on the touchdowns. And then when you say, well, he was catching every ball, Larry, he's catching nearly 70% of his targets. So that means he is catching nearly every low ball, high ball, everything that's coming his way. How many number 1 receivers in the NFL do you know that have 52 targets after 7 games?
Maybe it's because I just watched Jamar Chase.
He's not Jamar Chase. I agree with
Jamar
you.
Chase got targeted 19 times in one game.
I just watched Addison light up the Niners. I just wanted more from Ayuk. I thought Ayuk was going to have the kind of year that
Did you see Addison light up the Niners, or did you see Kirk Cousins light up the Niners? Did you see Jamar Chase light up the Niners, or did you see Joe Burrow light up the Niners?
Well, I don't know if I can even separate, but I thought Addison looked really, really good.
Man,
I agree.
Harsh critic.
I am a harsh critic because guess what? I needed to see a bunch of touchdowns, especially on a team that's got all these other weapons. It's like, you know what? I want to see. This guy was the best player. This was the best player in camp all summer by a country mile. If you had told me in July that we're going to get to November and he's going to have 2 touchdowns, I would have been like, what? He must have missed 3 or 4 games with injury, and he hasn't.
What if I told you he was going to have 1,400 yards receiving and miss a game? Would you feel good about that going into the season?
I mean, to me, it's about touchdowns. I want to see touchdowns. I want to see touchdowns.
My guy VK, excellent initials, by the way. Shout out to him because those are some super initials. VK, just saying. He says Purdy's 100 times more clutch than Brandon Ayuk, and this is where it gets interesting, right? Because who do you really attribute the clutchness to on the drive against the Browns? The clutch drive against the Browns before Moody missed the kick. The guy who caught the slant.
Thank you.
And outran Martin Emerson and got 18 yards after the catch to put him in field goal range. He doesn't get any credit for being clutch.
I didn't say no credit for being clutch.
Not you, my guy VK. You're not.
I think he's
LK.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think Ayuk's the best receiver they got. But let's look at this way too. Danny Gray, nothing. Debo's been hurt. His numbers are pedestrian. Kittle, not a whole lot of production. So I thought in lieu of that, especially based on what I saw this summer, that Ayuk was going off. And
is 1,400 yards not going off?
I mean,
you're punishing Ayuk because everybody else isn't holding their weight. And so he should be doing better because he's got to pick up for everybody else that's sucking and has big contracts already.
Well, because there's only one ball, right? So
right. So maybe blame those guys for not playing well and getting paid a crap ton.
If there was somebody else producing, then that would explain.
Yeah, there is somebody else producing.
His name is Christian McCaffrey. He takes all the touchdowns from everybody.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I wanted to see. I thought Ayuk was going to go off and really have the monster year, and I don't think he has.
Larry, he's been targeted 52 times. I wish I could get you the distribution, and I wish I had the distribution. I don't think he's been targeted that many times in the red zone for us to expect more touchdowns. I feel like when they get into the red zone, they're trying to yeah, that's pretty much it. I feel like when they're get into the red zone, they're actively trying to get the record for Christian McCaffrey. It seems almost like they're hunting it. He gets 2 out of 3 touches on a down cycle in the red zone.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not satisfied with 2 touchdowns in November. You could have 2 touchdowns and a half. I mean, that the fact that he's played all these games and only has 2 touchdowns, I think has been disappointing. And the fact that he has dropped some balls in recent weeks. I mean, he had 3 drops in that Cleveland game. Those balls hit him in the hands.
No, he didn't. I think he only counted for 1 drop. He did not have 3 drops in that game.
He had 3. He had 3
I don't
drops.
think
What
so.
were the other 2? Are you counting the one that he dove on the
No.
out
I'm
route 'cause he
thinking.
got
I'm talking the
rerouted by
stat.
Mark
Denzel
I want to
Ward
say. I think the
ball, that was
stat
a
was only
touchdown.
1 drop.
No. I mean, I watched that game 3 times. He had 3
I
drops
understand
in
what
that
you
game.
watched. I'm telling you this. The stat said only 1 drop, and I agree with that stat.
Ball hits you in the hands, you're supposed to catch it.
No, that is not true, Larry. Not all things are created equal. When you're running as fast as you can one direction and the ball comes here and you've got to stop and try to contort your body and it hits you in your hands, you're supposed to catch that? Come on, man. No way.
Tyreek Hill plays in an offense that has other weapons. Tyreek Hill's got
So now
1,
we're comparing
2,
him to the best
3,
receiver in football
4,
right now. He
5,
has 1,000 yards. He's better than everybody.
He's got
He's not better than
500-yard
Tyreek
days,
Hill,
and
Larry.
8 touchdowns.
We're not
He has
arguing
4
that.
times as many touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah,
What
but
about
we're
you?
not arguing that he's better than Tyreek Hill. If we were arguing that he was better than Tyreek Hill, then I would be like, yeah, you got me there, Larry. But I don't think he's better than Tyreek Hill, but I think he's having a terrific
You guys have low
individual
standards
season.
then. I think you have low standards for touchdowns. When you're talking about your number 1 receiver, your number 1
did you
receiver
ever
should
think
have more
Julio
touchdowns.
Jones was the best receiver in the sport of football?
Right.
Because that guy was always 6 touchdowns, 7 touchdowns, 1,800 yards, 1,900 yards.
Well, we're talking about years ago. I'm saying right now, Tyreek Hill has 8 touchdowns. We're halfway through the year. He's their number 1 receiver. Ayuk's the Niners' number 1 receiver. He's got 2.
So
I'd like to see a few
Julio
more
Jones
touchdowns.
had
having a mediocre
64
season
total
because
touchdowns.
Tyreek Hill's
Julio
in the
Jones
MVP
had 64 touchdowns
conversation.
on 900 receptions in his career. One time got to 10, and the rest of the time he had 3 seasons of 8, and then everything else was 6, 3, 2, 1. He had a couple seasons of 1. Like, you can't. Touchdowns are very dependent on a lot of things. A lot of things go into touchdowns, in my opinion.
I know, but you guys are ignoring the fact that Kittle was dinged up at the beginning of the year. Debo's missed time.
But
nobody else,
Ayuk's
no
fault.
other
Those guys
receivers.
got to perform too. Like, that should be an indictment
But
on
they
them, not
haven't
on
given
Ayuk.
him the
No,
ball
there's only
because
one
those guys
ball
are
that goes
banged
around.
up.
This guy's played and not scored touchdowns.
There's
That's the
like a
point.
quarter of a ball that goes around because one ball goes to
He's had 52
CMC.
targets this year, Larry. So are you saying that he's not getting targeted because he's just not getting open on the other plays that he doesn't get the ball?
I was worried in camp that BA was going to have the kind of year that would price him out of the 49ers. There's no chance of that now. No chance of that. He's not going to be priced out.
You think that if he has a 1,400-yard receiving season, he's still not priced out of the 49ers? Like, they can still pay him like clear-cut wide receiver 2 money?
2 touchdowns? He's on pace. What's he on pace for?
Andre Johnson never had a season of more than 9 touchdowns in the NFL, and that guy might go to the Hall of Fame.
But what's Ayuk on pace for touchdowns this year?
5 touchdowns. 1,400 yards and 5 touchdowns.
They'll be able to resign him. That's the good news.
Okay. I mean, that is great news, but come on, man. Jeez, 1,400 yards is a good season.
I'm not saying he's not having a good season. I'm saying he's not scoring touchdowns. They need touchdowns. I mean, based on the way he looked this summer, I haven't seen a receiver look that good in camp. And I've been covering 49er camp for a long time. I haven't seen a 49er receiver look that good in camp since Jerry. I mean, I don't know that Owen's ever had that good of a camp. This guy looked awesome this summer. It hasn't been awesome. It hasn't. You have different standards for different guys. I'm not saying that the yards aren't good. The yards are fine. But I mean, it's to me, it's about, I thought this guy was going off, and he's not gone off. To me, there was 3 guys in camp that looked awesome. Debo, Ayuk, and CMC. And really, only CMC has gone off. The other 2 guys are just kind of, all right, it's okay. Not bad. Not
You know, he's on pace for the 9th most receiving yards in a season by a 49er.
Once again, I'm talking touchdowns. You guys are talking
only 3 names
yards.
in 49ers history ahead of him, right? For that?
No, he would be
really?
second. He would be the 3rd name ahead of Debo Samuel, behind Owens 2 seasons, and
So if I
behind
asked
like
you
6
guys
of
this
Jerry
summer
Rice's seasons.
about how many touchdowns he would score, you guys were going to say 4 or 5? Really?
I don't know what
But,
I would have said.
but I've watched the
if you would have told
games.
me
I don't
1,400
blame
yards
it.
in
Wait,
16 games, I would have said a great season.
The Niners starting
wait,
the
wait,
Niners
wait.
starting caliber receivers, Ayuk and Debo, combined have scored 3 touchdowns.
Oh, that's not Ayuk's fault, though.
We've been watching. Wait. We've been watching the games. What touchdowns should the guy have scored that he's not scored? Where has he been just getting targeted in the red zone where he should be scoring touchdown galore? CMC gets the primary bulk of the touches in the red zone. Like, come on. It's not like, oh, we came in before the season. Like, if you told me before the season the 49ers have targeted Brandon Ayuk 20 times this year and he's not scored a touchdown, and then you asked me before the season I would have expected him to do with 20 opportunities in the red zone, then you have a point. Does anybody even have the target share for him in the red zone? I doubt that it's above 10.
I expected the guy would have about 10 to 12 touchdowns, and he's nowhere close to that this year.
So
and
if
then
he
I
was
would
on
have
pace for 800 yards and 10
if
touchdowns,
he wasn't going to
would you
get
be
those
happy?
touchdowns, that Kittle would have a bunch and Ayuk would have a bunch, or Debo would have a bunch, but they really don't.
CMC
so it's their
has
fault
a
that
ton.
the offense isn't scoring. The offense isn't scoring touchdowns.
I'm just saying, I expected. You asked me about Brandon Ayuk. I'm telling you, I expected him to score 10 to 12 touchdowns, and you guys did too. And for whatever reason, you don't feel that way now, but that's what I expected. So to me, it's been hugely disappointing. If he winds up scoring 5 touchdowns on the year, then that's in an offense like this, and Debo didn't have a big year, and Kittle doesn't have a big year. That's not going to bode well for the 49ers.
It's his fault that he doesn't score touchdowns in that particular case. It's nobody else's fault that the offense didn't score touchdowns. It would be his fault that he didn't score more touchdowns because other people didn't score touchdowns, so therefore he should have scored more touchdowns. Sounds to me like you're making an indictment of the 49ers offense, that they're all not playing well and they're all not scoring enough. It's not an individual indictment of Brandon Ayuk, who's rarely been targeted in the red zone.
But, I mean, targets also have to do with who's open, man. I mean, that's simple as that. I mean, you can't just say, well, hey, man, he hasn't been targeted all year. It's not on him.
I'm ready.
Dude,
next show, we will go
man.
through and we'll watch all 52 targets Brandon Ayuk has had this year. And we can go through and watch every route Brandon Ayuk has run this year. I'm ready to do it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I mean,
if you were honest, I'll do it.
If you were honest with yourself,
see how much he's open.
You would have said, you know what? I thought this guy was going to score 6 to 8 touchdowns. Here we are. It's November. He scored 2. Now he can turn it around.
Yeah, but I'm also honest with myself enough to not call a guy projected for 1,400 yards in a season a mediocre season. He's having a terrific season. How many players in NFL history have had 1,400 receiving yards?
This guy had to score some touchdowns on this team. I mean, and the fact of the matter is he has not. So that's what I'm pointing to. You're pointing to receptions. I'm pointing to touchdowns.
No, I'm pointing to his season.
He's got
his season.
Right. And I'm talking about his season as well. And he's got 2 touchdowns on the season.
My bad. My Siri cut in. I missed that. Go ahead.
Somebody said Puka Nacua has been played better. Puka Nacua, first of all, has 37 more targets, has played 1 more game. He does have more yards, has less touchdowns, and his catch percentage is right around the same. Like, I don't, and also Puka has a fumble and Ayuk doesn't. So that negates one of his touchdowns essentially, because he's turning the ball over. So okay. I guess if you have 30-something more targets, if Ayuk had 30-something more targets, he'd be close to 1,000 yards, I bet. Not 700-something.
And he'd have a couple more touchdowns.
Yeah.
I bet.
Yeah. Okay. Nick says,
wow, Nick did not know what he was starting.
He didn't. I didn't know it was going to go that way. I was like, it'll be a quick one. Brother Bob says, likes to throw the ball short. Is that not dink and dunk? Brother Bob says, don't get mad, PP. It's okay. Purdy is D&D. You said it. It's D&D. Oh, dink and dunk. Okay.
Purdy has the highest passer rating on passes 25 plus yards down the field. That doesn't sound like dink and dunk. Guess who ripped dink and dunk? Kurt Warner.
Well, to be fair, Larry, I agree with you. He's not dink and dunk, but that does not argue that he's not dink and dunk. because him having the highest rating, what tells you would be if he had the most attempts, 25 plus yards, because that's indicative.
No,
that he's
not at
pushing.
all. What if that's not the offense? Kyle's
But
offense
no,
is to throw short.
I agree with you.
Almost all of his
he's not
passes are
dinking
short
and
and
dunking,
intermediate.
by saying he has the highest passer rating, he could have the highest passer rating being 1-for-1. That
Do you know
sample
Jimmy
size doesn't
Garoppolo
tell
in
you he's not
2019 had the
dinking and
highest
dunking.
completion percentage of past 20 yards? And we
The
know
49ers don't have the 49ers don't go down the field that much, period.
Yeah, but I feel like the better way to indicate that he's not dinking and dunking is that he's probably gone down the field more than any other 49ers quarterback we've seen in the first 8 games. I feel pretty comfortable saying that.
Then why was people calling him dink and dunk?
I guess some people believe that.
That's a good question.
Everybody can have an opinion. You
Right.
think Brandon Ayuk's having a mediocre season? I disagree
He's
with
got
that.
2
I think that's wild.
touchdowns. He's got 2 touchdowns.
Matt says
He's
need
got 2
tougher media numbers
touchdowns.
in the rooms. And he's on pace for 1,400 yards. Brother Bob says, Vish, keep it a buck. Didn't PP call him a dinkaling?
Wait, what?
Dinkaling.
Yo, Krug, I gotta start
says-
watching the rest of your shows. Apparently, you're saying things according to Brother Bob in those.
I don't know. Dazza says the price for Jalen Johnson was supposedly too high. Yes, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Were they wanting a first? They were wanting a first and then some. Given how badly the Niners draft cornerbacks, wasn't it worth it? I don't know about that, because he also probably wanted 15 plus million, and that's a lot of money. Matt says
Supposedly
Larry's
wanted
more
17 million. That's the talk was that he wanted 17 million, and that's why they didn't make that trade.
Well, either way, 15, 17, that's a lot when they got a lot of contracts already. Matt says Larry's more critical of BA than he is Purdy. James says Matt Canada was out of the booth and on the field tonight. He faced a lot of criticism, definitely animated on the sideline. Thoughts?
My thought there, you should watch the game for where you're comfortable watching the game.
I agree.
And this idea that you're going to force Steve Wilkes out of his comfort zone. I mean, is there anything worse? Just fire Steve Wilkes. If you don't want Steve Wilkes, then don't have Steve Wilkes. But if he wants a coach, this idea that, well, you can't coach from the booth. Dan Quinn coaches from the booth. Vic Fangio coaches from the booth. Don't dictate. Steve should dictate to them. They shouldn't dictate to him. It's like anything else. You're a doctor. Where you stand in relation to the patient should be up to you. It's all about getting the correct diagnosis. So if Steve's more comfortable in the booth, he should stay in the booth.
I think Ayuk would have more touchdowns if Steve was on the sidelines, but that's just me. Go ahead, Fish.
I actually have a theory on why this is helpful, and I actually see him in the chat right now. Coach T, who coaches high school football, I saw him on Twitter explaining what's different between standing in the booth and standing on the field from his perspective in high school football. And he said the main difference is when you're in the booth, you just, you don't get a feeling for what's going on in the game in terms of the energy and how everybody is feeling. But when you're on the field, you can feel the energy of your team. You can feel how they're feeling. You can go off of their energy, and that can dictate your calls. And where I agree with you, Larry, he should be able to coach from wherever he wants. Where I think this might help is right now, I feel like there's just a lack of belief in his calls in terms of his players. There seems to be an execution miss between the call that's being made and what's happening on the field. And I wonder if perhaps him being on the field and him being able to feel the environment and feel the energy of his players will allow him to then call the game in a way that caters to what they're looking for in terms of how the game's being called. Because I would say the biggest miss with the defense right now, of all the things, of the number of bad calls, of the amount of bad play, is what seems to be the lack of sync, where defensive coordinator and defense don't seem to be on the same page in terms of how they want to play. And perhaps him being on the field, him feeling the energy of the game, him feeling the energy and confidence of his players in the moment might help him be able to decipher that. Or maybe it doesn't, and I'm just bloviating for the last 2 minutes.
Jamar Chase isn't a good receiver either. He only has 4 touchdowns on the season with 85 targets. So, I mean, while we're calling out receivers for being overrated. James says Matt Canada. Yeah, we got that one. Okay. Brother Bob says, Vish, I meant dink and dunk. PP said it on Cone, right? Just seriously, be real. Don't be afraid. I asked Nails to let me on the show. while I drive to LAX. Yeah, I wasn't gonna let that happen, brother Bob.
dude, this receiver named Devontae Adams.
Doesn't Larry have a
touchdowns on the
call-in
year.
show? Has he ever called into your call-in show, Larry?
No, I mean, he's more than welcome to call in if you want.
Call into Larry's call-in show. Why do I feel like I have to be a mediator between you and Larry for your conflict? Like, this is crazy. PP recall saying Ayuk was graded higher than Brock Purdy.
What's that?
Do you recall saying that Ayuk was graded?
I think Ayuk is like PFF's like he's a top 5 graded receiver on PFF. Not that their grading system necessarily matters, but I think he is graded top 5.
We were talking about what we were expecting to see. I thought we were going to see an all-time season from Ayuk. I don't feel like I've seen an all-time season from Ayuk.
Well, I think your expectations were an all-time season. And technically, 1,400 yards in a 49er uniform is an all-time season.
Not really. I mean, when nobody else is doing anything and you're going to have this monster year, I thought he was going to have a monster year. I've been watching training camp for 20 fucking years. I've never seen a receiver have the kind of receiving camp that this guy had. This guy went high. He went low. He caught everything. He's dropped a ton of balls this year. I mean, the fact that he's got 2 touchdowns and we're in November. I mean, come on. I mean, this and nobody else is. It's not like they have a bunch of other guys scoring touchdowns. They don't. They needed this guy to step up with a monster touchdown year, and it hasn't happened.
Oh, okay. I have 2 questions for you. One, dropping a ton of balls, like a ton. That description when the guy has caught 70% of his targets feels a little bit amiss. He's dropped a few passes, and they've stuck in our memory because 2 of them have been especially egregious. The one that hit him in the face mask, and then the touchdown he dropped on the post versus Cleveland. Besides that, I think the other
Tyreek
drop
Hill has 6 drops this year. So
and the other drop, by the way,
he's 4 times as many touchdowns.
Puka Nacua has 6 drops.
But
Puka
here's
Nacua
the second
has 6.
part. Here's the
Amon
second
Ra,
part of the
St.
topic.
Brown has 4. Mike Evans has 4. I'm just saying, like, T. Higgins has 4.
Here's the second part, though. Because the drop's fine. You want to take that, fine. Like, okay, they scored more touchdowns, so therefore they can drop the ball more. That's fine. But when I brought up the Purdy,
2 drops on the season, I told you they didn't count those as 3 drops that game. He has 2 on the season.
When I brought up the Purdy thing, right, with the passer rating and all of that, you said, well, he plays in an offense. You can't expect him to have that many attempts down the field because he plays in an offense that they don't throw it down there. But now we have to expect Brandon Ayuk to have 12 touchdowns when he plays in an offense that doesn't throw the ball in the red zone to him?
12 touchdowns would be
10 to 12. That's what you said. That was your expectation for this
That's
year.
By the end of the year. That's 6 times what he has right now.
But if the offense doesn't throw him the ball in the red zone, we should expect him to score touchdowns. But we shouldn't expect Purdy to have.
Maybe they're not throwing him the ball in the red zone because he's not open.
Or they're running it in the red zone because Christian McCaffrey scores every game.
Have you thought that maybe they don't throw him the ball in the red zone because he's not open?
How did the guy go from having the greatest camp ever to not being open in the red zone?
I don't know.
Open everywhere else because he's about to have 1,400 yards. I'm welcoming you. Next week, it's on my platform. We can do the full show and go through every single one of Brandon Ayuk's red zone route running opportunities. I'm 100% ready to do that for the full show.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Do it.
It'll be a great fucking show.
Okay.
Hopkins is
Old.
one of the most reliable receivers of all time as far as catching the ball, and he has 2 drops this season. That's the same as Ayuk. He's not dropping the ball a ton.
Yeah,
the perception is
I saw him drop 3 balls in the Cleveland
game. That's not
game.
a drop, though, Larry. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's not a drop. What you constitute as a drop versus what actually constitute as a drop is 2 different things. Again, when a receiver is running full speed across the field and a ball is thrown behind him, and he happens to be acrobatic enough to get his hands on it as he's trying to turn around and go the other way, that is not a drop. Now, maybe as a number 1 receiver, you expect that he should catch it. That's fair. But to say that that's a drop, it's not a drop. It's just not.
In my mind, if the ball hits you in the hands, you should catch it.
I mean, so then do you think the one that Purdy, when he rolled left and threw it back right and the ball hit him in the tips of his fingers at the ground, he should have caught that too?
No, the
I mean,
ball
technically it
bounced.
hit
The
him in
ball
his hands.
bounced to him. The ball bounced to him.
No, it hit his tips of his fingers.
No, come on. Don't be stupid.
I'm trying to figure out what's a drop. I guess I don't know anymore.
If it hits you in the hands, you should catch it. You're a receiver. The way they define drops, I mean, that's how I define drops. If it hits you in the hands, you should catch it. That ball hit the ground.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if he had made the catch, that would have been a shoestring catch.
Do you think if he would have made that catch where he's running across the field full speed and has to stop mid route and turn around, don't you think that would have been a heck of a catch though?
I mean, there's degrees of everything, but personally, I just expected Brandon Ayuk, based on the summer that he had, to have a bust out campaign. And is this his best campaign for yards, maybe, but not for touchdowns? Didn't he have more touchdowns in other years?
Though you know the context of why he hasn't scored touchdowns.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
They haven't thrown him the ball in the red zone.
Yeah, but Vish, but you know that you're assuming he's open there. We don't know that he's open. Part of your job is to get open. Somebody's going to score touchdowns. My point is, look at Debo, look at him. They're not scoring touchdowns in the red zone.
Yeah, so, we know somebody has to score touchdowns. The guy's name is Christian McCaffrey. He's had a touchdown in 17 straight football games. It's the freest bet in any sports book today is Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown on Sunday. It's about the freest cheese. Free whatever amount of money you want to make. Worst odds every single week.
So how many touchdowns did you think he was going to score this year?
I don't know, but I've also come into
how many did you think he was going to score?
Why does that matter what I thought? How many touchdowns I thought he was going to score in August? I've watched the last 8 games. It's not like I've expected him to score 5 touchdowns and he's only scored 2. He scored the 2 touchdowns I expected him to score.
You expect him to score 2 touchdowns.
Maybe he should have scored on the post that he dropped versus Cleveland. I think Denzel Ward would have run him down on that. But he should have caught that pass. Besides that, what other place should he have scored touchdowns?
You got to
give me examples. You can't just say before this season, I expected him to score 7 touchdowns, and then we have watched 8 different games. Not give me one example of a touchdown in those 8 games he should have scored, but said, I, in August, thought he should have scored 8 touchdowns.
I think as your number one receiver, you should probably score 6 to 10 touchdowns. I don't think that's unreasonable. And the fact that he's got 2, to me, says that, hey, man, I'd like to see more. And I don't think that's crazy.
Okay, you would like to see more, but that's not what you said. The argument was how good his season was. I said,
I said he's underperforming based on what I thought he was going to do. I thought the guy would score 10 to 12 touchdowns at least. I thought there was a chance he would score more than that. He scored 2 touchdowns. It's very disappointing in my mind. I think he should have had way more touchdowns at this point, and he hasn't had them, and he hasn't been hurt, and it's not like they're going to Debo. See, there's reasons why he wouldn't score touchdowns. It would be if Debo had a ton or if Kittle had a ton, but they don't.
Jason says
Christian McCaffrey has a ton, Larry. Christian McCaffrey has a ton of
He's not a receiver, Vish. You tell me the Niners receivers were gonna combine for 4 touchdowns all year?
How many touchdowns have they thrown for, Larry?
I'm just saying that I expected Ayuk. I mean, come on, dude. Let's just fucking move on. Now you're annoying the shit out of me. What? I mean, seriously, at this point, nobody who actually knows the Niners thought Brandon Ayuk was going to score 2 touchdowns this year. And that's what he's got, 2.
Larry, you are projecting something in August, Larry. You said in August, I thought he should have this many touchdowns. I said, okay, that's totally fine. Now you're going back to your August projection when we have had 8 individual games. All I'm asking you, if you're going to say, okay,
the question was, what did you expect?
Larry,
I expected him to do better.
Every single one of these, I've let you finish. Now I feel like it's your turn to let me finish for one of these. So let me finish. And what I wanted to say is we've seen 8 games of Brandon Ayuk, 6 of them in which he has played significant snaps. Can you tell me which plays in those 6 games that he should have scored touchdowns for us to increase that number from 2 to 6? You can't say in August I expected him to score 2 touchdowns. In August, you were projecting about a season that's not been played. We have seen 6 games in this football season.
So, I mean, that's just so ludicrous. So, in August, we couldn't say, well, you know what? We thought we would see about 6 to 12 touchdowns.
No. Now you're creating a straw man. You're
No, I'm
saying that
not.
I said no. Yes,
The
you're being
question
funny.
was, are you happy with Ayuk's season? I said, no, I'm not. I
And you're
expected,
saying
based
that
on what I
your
saw in
projection
camp,
in
to him,
August. But we've
for
had
him to
8
score 6 to
games.
12 touchdowns, and
But
he's
we've
got
seen him
2.
play 8 games. How has he played in those 8 games? That's not what you're answering. You're saying, "Oh, I expected him to do this in August, and he hasn't done that in these 8 games."
The question was, do I think he's had a good season?
Yes,
and I
you
said,
he's
no,
had
I don't think he's had a good season because I projected him to have quite a few more touchdowns than he has. That's all I'm saying. Why is it so hard to understand?
Because when I say, well, I think he's had a terrific season,
I didn't say he dropped this touchdown and that touchdown and this touchdown and that touchdown. And in this game, he could have had this touchdown and that touchdown. I'm saying in August, when I was standing there at practice, watching him go up and down the field, make all these catches, that I thought, you know what? This guy's probably going to score 6 to 12 touchdowns this year. And he's not.
I haven't misrepresented what you've said. Okay, you thought then he should have scored 6 to 12 touchdowns. I agree. What I'm saying is you've watched 8 games. If you still think he should have thrown 6 touchdowns or he should have caught 6 touchdowns by now in those 8 games, can you tell me where he should have caught those touchdowns? That's what I'm asking.
No, I can't. No,
exactly,
I can't.
Because in August, you saw a player that you thought was going to catch 6 to 12 touchdowns.
Right.
And we've watched 8 games into the season, and he's not been targeted in the red zone. So therefore, 2 touchdowns is perfectly reasonable given the target distribution that he's had in the red zone.
All right. Sounds good.
I mean, Larry, you can laugh, but the logical flow is pretty reasonable there.
Really not.
You expected him to do something in August. We've actually seen him do something for 8 games, and you're still going back to your August expectation?
Yes. He's been healthy. He's been in there. I mean, whatever, dude. Whatever.
What if he gets?
You're right. You're right, Vish. You're right, buddy.
What if he gets six
Larry,
more touchdowns in the second half of the season?
You're right. No. You're right.
It's okay.
You're the king of football. You're right, dude. You're right.
Okay. I'm not going to go personal with you. You can do that.
You're right.
Okay.
All right.
I keep it classy.
Yeah.
Let's move on. All right. Brother Bob says, okay, PP, who has more turnovers, BA or Brock Purdy? I'll wait. I don't think any turnovers. Ryan says BA is the most wide open receiver in the NFL. That's true. He is. Dazza says Brock Purdy is a top 10 quarterback, but BA is only average. Not Hill, JJ, or AJ, but a top 10 wide receiver. Not Hill, AJ, or JJ. Not top 10. I don't know. Miguel says BA doesn't have more TDs because his QB keeps throwing the ball to the other team. Fish and Chip says BA needs to change his name to Mick Ayuk, Irish Niners. Dazza says, also, how many targets does BA have in the red zone? I think that was the conversation at hand. I don't know the total. Luis says, I love the different takes. It's way more entertaining. I love you guys. Love you too, Luis. Matt says, Larry equal Lombardi. I don't know about all that. Jay Miller says Ayuk got hit in the face. In the face. Okay, so that means he's having a bad season because he dropped a ball, I guess. Okay. Brother Bob says Ryan G, PP, hands down. It's not even close. Smarter too. All right. Come on. All day, every day. Kim says Larry, Miami has a better head coach and QB than San Francisco. How do you like them apples? Ooh, actually, that's a good question. What do you? Because I think this is actually a conversation. Who do you think is better between Brock Purdy and Tua, Larry? I think this is actually a good conversation.
I think Tua's got better speed, better weapons.
Would you take? Okay, let's do it this way.
I like Purdy's processing ability. I think he processes better, but I think Tua's got better weapons, more speed, maybe even a better play caller.
Do you think it's fair to say, because this is kind of my take on this, and I talked about this earlier in the year, is that I would take, for this system and this team, I would take Brock Purdy, but for their system and their team, I would take Tua. You agree with that?
I think that's fair.
They throw short to their guys, and their guys give them run after the catch. So I don't think it's dramatically different. But the Niners rely on run after the catch. The Dolphins rely on less run after the catch, and a little bit more pushing the ball a little bit further down the field. I like speed. I like speed weapons. I think you create big plays when you have speed, and when you have speed, you also create space in the field. So I like their receivers a lot more. I like Tyreek. I like Waddle. I like their speed at running back. The Niners have the better line. The Niners have the better tight end. But I like Tyreek and Waddle more than I like Ayuk and Debo.
Oh, I agree with that.
I
I
agree, too.
think despite what the numbers say, and maybe you agree with this, Vish, I think Tua is a better deep ball thrower than Purdy, and I think for that offense, that is certainly needed.
I think it's that, and I think Tua's probably a little more accurate than Purdy, but then Purdy definitely has got a little bit more wiggle, creativity than Tua. Definitely a little bit more creativity off schedule, though Tua isn't bad off schedule. In terms of Waddle and Hill versus Ayuk and Debo, 100% I'm taking Waddle and Hill. But I mean, you're talking about the Niners 5. I'd take those 5 of the Debo, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, or the 4, the Debo, Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk combination over their 4 of Waddle, Waddle, Hill. If you want to throw A-Chain in there, and then if you want to do Mostert, I mean, I guess A-Chain is hurt, but I do
A-Chain's
think the weapons
good.
are fairly comparable if we look at the entire compass and throw in tight ends and backs in there.
Okay, that's fair. Gammon says, Larry, stand your ground, King. Don't let these bullies bully you. BA without 10 plus TDs is why we got Ronnie Bell. The earth is flat. We didn't land on the moon. Also, the NFL is scripted. Conspiracy theorists, Gammon?
He went everywhere.
Let me say it this way.
Yeah.
Did you guys think when you were watching Ayuk this summer that he was going to be as good as he's been, worse than he's been, or better than he's been?
You want me to be honest, I think he's about where I expected him to be.
Once again, did you guys expect him this year to be
what I expected
better
him to
than
be?
he's been?
Did I not answer the
worse
question?
Than he's been? Well, you said he's been about as what you expect him to be. But
okay.
But
answering
based on the way he's played up to this point,
yeah,
did you expect him to be better, worse, or the same?
Okay, the same is what I was saying.
The same.
Different wording, but the same. Okay, go ahead.
He's never scored less than 5 touchdowns.
He's still got over half the season left, Larry. Who says he's going to score less than 5 at this point? He's on pace to score 5, which is exactly.
I know. I thought he was going to have like his.
He's also never
year.
had over 1,000 yards, has he?
Yeah,
he's on pace
he had it
1,400.
last year.
He had 1,000 yards. I mean, he's going to have more yards,
over
but
1,000, yeah,
barely over 1,000.
Like last year, he had 8 touchdowns and 1,000 yards. If you had said to me this summer,
he also played one more game.
Is Ayuk going to have a better year than he had this year, a worse year, or the same year? I would have absolutely just said, no doubt he's going to have a better year. And he's going to have a better year in yards, but he's not going to have a better year in touchdowns. And to me, that was like the unthinkable in August based on the way he was playing. That's all I was saying. Thought he was going to have a big year. Thought he was going to have a monster year. I thought there was a chance, to be completely honest, I thought there was a chance he would have 16 touchdowns, like a monster year. And we're not going to get anywhere close to that.
But they've thrown for 12 of them, and Christian McCaffrey has caught 4 of them. That's a third of them, which means that of the remaining 8 touchdowns, he's caught 25% of it, which I guess maybe he should have a higher ratio as a higher weapon on the team. But you're acting like they've thrown for 20 touchdowns this year, and he's caught 2. They've thrown 12, and the running back has scored 13 touchdowns individually, 9 rushing, 4 receiving.
Yeah, I wasn't factoring in McCaffrey's production against it. I was just saying, and I knew McCaffrey was going to have a good year too, and I knew Debo. I thought Debo was going to have a good year too, but I was convinced that Ayuk was going to have the monster year.
But you did make
the monster year, right? Would have been more than 8 touchdowns, and that's really what I thought. Around 10, and he's not.
But part of the argument you made was Well, if Debo was scoring touchdowns, I would get that he has only 2. If Kittle was scoring touchdowns, I get that he would have only 2. And then I said Christian McCaffrey, but you said that's a running back. Well, they've thrown for 12 touchdowns, and that running back has caught 4 of them. It's 33% of their entire touchdown share throwing. That is a large volume of their touchdowns, receptions for the running back.
Let's see. Did you think Brock Purdy was going to have more than 25 passing touchdowns? Because that's what he's on pace for. And I'm not saying this to slam Brock Purdy.
I think that's exactly what I said he would have.
So you thought he would have 25 touchdowns and Ayuk
and Brandon Ayuk would catch 16 of them?
Or 16 of those 25?
Well, I thought there was a very good chance that Ayuk was going to have the biggest year, and he's not.
I think most of us thought that Brock Purdy would have 30 touchdowns, and he still made. That's the beauty of this is there's still half
I said
a
to
season.
you guys 25 to 30 touchdowns and what would I say 8 to 12 picks, something like that.
Okay.
Something like that.
But 25 touchdowns in Ayuk getting half of those or 16 of those is like an astronomical unfair number. Like that's just
Purdy's on pace for 26 touchdowns and 11 picks. Okay. That I thought he would probably get closer to 30, but
so if he picks up his pace, though, what I'm saying is if he picks up his pace and gets closer to and does end with, let's say, 30, then it could stand to reason that Ayuk maybe ends up with 8. So if Ayuk ends up with 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns at the end of the season, does that live up to your expectations? I just want to know what the expectations were. 1,400 yards. I already
said what the expectations were. I thought he was gonna score 8 to 12 touchdowns.
Okay.
I was convinced that he would have more that he would set his record for touchdowns this year.
So 1,400 yards and eight touchdowns, you think would be a good season for him? Well, that would meet your expectations, is what I'm hearing you say, because you said 8 to 12 touchdowns.
8 is his career high. I thought he would have more than his career high. I mean, I thought he looked the best that I've seen him look this summer. So I expected him to have a big year. And I expected him to set records. Now, he is going to set records for yards, but he's not going to set records for touchdowns. It doesn't look like.
Okay. So since BA isn't having a good season, but he's the most wide open receiver being thrown to, so the only logical conclusion is that it's Brock Purdy or Kyle Shanahan's fault. I think the only way is to actually watch the film, like Vish is saying. Brother Bob says, PP, are you saying that BA needs a better quarterback?
He's just a world's classic, just swirling and serving
he
the
is.
pot.
That's what I said. He's the Dre Greenlaw of the chat, man. He's always right up there. He's about to get a penalty.
By the way, while we're on the topic, because I did say terrific, and 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns in my mind is a terrific wide receiver season.
I agree. Brother Bob says, question for the former scout. You apply for the GM? Miguel says, love Larry. He strikes me as the type that looks in the mirror and says, I am right, and everyone else is wrong. Could you imagine?
Larry, do you do that? Do you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror as you're brushing your teeth?
I will after this
today
stream,
I'm right.
Sure.
All right,
you,
I'm planning to do the same
right.
thing. You know what? I'm not even going to say everybody else is wrong. I'm going to look in the mirror and go, Vish, you were right. Larry was wrong. Not everybody else. Larry was wrong.
Bass Spokane Niner fan says, what is the double coverage percentage on Ayuk compared to the rest of the league? I don't know. I'm not going to do it in the middle of this stream. I don't know. I feel like he's probably not double covered a ton. A lot of zone is played against the Niners. Ryan says BA is ranked 4th in yards of separation right now. That is a fact. What is he in the red zone is helpful as well if you've got that number. 808 Niner says, laugh out loud. Come on. Now your excuse for BA is maybe he's not open in the red zone. Maybe Brock Purdy is only looking at CMC and maybe Kyle Shanahan is only running plays for CMC. Film won't lie. Ty Bud says, Larry, with such conviction, doesn't matter if BA isn't getting targets. He needs to get the ball in the end zone. Did he say that? I don't know. I kind of tuned out. You guys were getting too heated.
Dazza he tuned us out this week. Look at that. You know what? Last week I tuned the two of you out.
That's true. That's fair. That's fair. We had a quarter. You know what? I'll tell you this, Vish. I didn't think coming into this show that the most heated conversation we would have would be around Brandon Ayuk. But
Me
that
neither.
right there
Me neither.
is the
I didn't have my
surprise.
money. Dude,
We
I'm
didn't
gonna
even
be
talk
honest.
about Brock
I
Purdy.
came
We
into this
barely
show.
even talked about him.
I came into this show with my popcorn ready, and I was ready to sit and watch you two go at it for another hour. And I was gonna have a good time reading the chat because the chat's always electric, and I was gonna be chilling. Next thing I know, Nick, who knew something about me and Larry today, he felt it in the air. He asked that question about Brandon Ayuk, and Larry and I are yelling at each other for an hour.
Dazza says, what would BA's numbers be like if he was on the Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, or Bengals? I don't know. Probably pretty damn good. DP says balls almost interception are intercepted by all the BS. Balls almost intercepted are intercepted by all the BS. I don't know.
All that.
I don't know what you're trying to say. Matt says BA needs a better quarterback throwing him the ball.
Purdy hater.
Brother Bob says Vish about to cook PP. This is going to be good. This was a while ago. Ty Bud says best show ever. The contention is classic. Louis says love the opposite take. This is way more entertaining. Love you guys. Didn't we already get to you? Am I going backwards? Did I not read these? I feel like these got inverted
Larry's
somehow.
or Jesse's just trying to like casually set up round 3 between Larry and I.
I'm just reading
by pulling
these.
up enough questions from the conversation.
I just got to get through the super chats before we get out of here. That's all I'm trying to do. Don't put me in the middle of this bitch. I'm just kidding. Nick says here's $1. Ty Bud says Larry, if Kyle shifts to CMC in the red zone, then what? You mean I don't know. I don't know where you're going with that one. Michael Brown says maybe it's the quarterback's fault. Our receivers have no TDs. How much? So then, okay. So our receivers, we know George Kittle has 3. We know CMC has how many? How many did you say, Vish? 4?
He has 4 receiving touchdowns. Yeah.
So that's 7. So the receivers on the team have 5 total.
I'm not even sure about that because Juszczyk has 1 that he had versus Dallas. That's 8.
Ronnie Bell has
2. Brandon Ayuk has 2. Debo has 1. Ronnie Bell has 1.
Okay.
So we're talking about 4 touchdowns for the receivers.
Yeah. A third. John says
Ronnie Bell has half as many touchdowns as Ayuk.
And like a 100th of the yards. John says, Larry, when the entire playbook is CMC in the red zone or Kittle, that explains the 2 TDs. Ask Kyle why that is. You know what? Actually, that is a great question to ask him. And actually, I think you can frame it that way. Hey, listen, Ayuk had a hell of a training camp. It looked like he was in a breakout in a big way.
I expected him to score 12 touchdowns.
No, yeah. To all these, where's the touchdowns? He's only got 2 on the season. Are you going to make a concerted effort to get him more in the second half? I think that's a fair question. Do you think it's a fair question?
Maybe to BA himself.
BA himself, maybe.
Why do you feel like you haven't been scoring as much as we expected this year?
I think it's a fair question to ask. I think that's a very fair question. Fish and Chip says, are we happy? You're in the chat also texting. I can't get my point across. I'm throwing in a super chat.
2 pounds. 2 pounds.
Fish and Chip says, are we happy with the questioning at the presser or not? Questioning in the presser. I don't know. I personally go back and forth on the media. I think there's a lot of times that there's great questions asked and they do a good job. I think my only gripe with the media isn't the original questions asked. I feel like everybody has their own agenda of like the article that they want to write. And so they're going to ask that question no matter what the flow of the conversation is. Let me give you an example. If we came up here with our 5 topics tonight, and when you asked a super chat that turned into Ayuk explosion, if I was like, all right, nope, stop it, guys. We're not going with the flow of the show. I got questions to ask about the defense or whatever. Like, that would be weird, don't you think? Sometimes you just got to go with the flow of the show, or in this case, the flow of the questions. I think the follow-up on questions from other media members is lacking sometimes because, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys really only get one question. You don't get to follow up on your own questions. And I feel like sometimes great questions are asked and follow-ups are there to be had, but the other media members are like, oh, I got a Jennings article I got to write, so I'm going to ask about that.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow up if you want. You can follow up. I mean, you got to ask it quick. And, but I mean, typically, it's kind of, it's look at it this way. It's like a box of donuts. There's 12 of them, let's just say. If you go and take a donut, that's fine. If you take 4, you're a pig, right? And it's the same kind of thing. It's like 12. There's going to be 12 questions in the session. So if you ask one, okay, that's fine. That's good. If you ask another follow-up, if you go beyond 3 and there's 10 or 12 people in the room, you're going to start getting stank eye from those other people. Now, if there's Forsters in the room and there's only 3 media people, then you almost have to ask 3 or 4 or more. Otherwise, because he's there to answer a series of questions and everybody's in the locker room already. That happens too. So you look around the room, you see how many people are there. You know the guy's going to talk for 8 to 12 minutes. If you had something super compelling, you could probably go with as many as you want. But when you commandeer the whole thing, people start giving you looks like, "Hey, man, I got a job to do over here." But I'll say this: I can't stand the, what happened? What happened on? You guys fumbled 2 snaps. You guys fumbled 2 snaps. What happened there?
I know who you're talking about.
I hate that. It drives me crazy.
When was it asked too? When was it asked?
Or like
asked recently.
Hey, you know what? What's the deal with the elbow? I mean, it's like, come on, man. I mean, just ask the PR guy in the hallway after. You don't have to ask that in the presser.
GTC Real says, I blame Kyle, Larry. Someone needs to press Kyle as to why CMC is the red zone targets, has all the red zone targets and not Ayuk. He cost my man Johnny C $5,300. Kyle is responsible.
Damn, Johnny C.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Great one says, oh, Adams has 16 red zone targets and Ayuk has 3.
3 red zone
only
targets.
Has 3 red zone
touchdowns.
targets and 2 touchdowns? That's awful. Bass Spokane Niner says
this is where I wish I didn't work, and I wish I was still in college, because I would have known that he had only 3 red zone targets. Now I'm not able to just surf Twitter during lectures and stuff like that. Not that I ever did that. If my parents are watching, I spent your money and always paid attention in class, but I would have known that.
Your parents aren't watching. They don't care.
I know.
He says our team's double covering Ayuk in the red zone more than on drives. That's also a possibility. Again, I don't know the answer to that question. You bring up very good points, though. Luis says, Vish and PP, y'all chill. At the end of the day, we're all rooting for the same team. Listen,
yeah, we're on the same team.
This is passionate arguments and 2 people that care about the points they are making. So sometimes you got to let it happen.
Brandon Ayuk.
Brother Bob says, Vish, I got your back. I can't stand peeps getting personal. Dazza says, LK with 2 weeks of hot takes. Brock Purdy over Herbert, and now BA is average.
You didn't say he was average. You said he was having an average season difference.
Oh, that's true.
No, he's not having an average season. An average season would mean that he would score between 5 and 8 touchdowns. He's having a below average season.
Oh, even better hot take. Okay. Perfect. Vicky says McDaniel will win a Super Bowl before Shanahan. Ooh, I don't know that Miami's winning a Super Bowl anytime soon either. Andre says the last 3 games, Ayuk was the best receiver on our team, not the best receiver on the field. Cooper, Addison made plays, and their QB with contested catches. Ayuk gets wide open, but when the coverage is tight, he's not a playmaker. Okay.
I actually agree. Yes, I criticized him after both of those games. That's the funny thing. But at the same time, when I look at the entirety of his season, I do think for the most part, he's been pretty terrific.
Name the song. Ryan says, Larry, you got to know when to hold him. Know when to fold him. Know when to walk away and know when to run. That's a great country song. Dazza says, Kelsey only has 4 TDs and he's on the Chiefs offense. Good point.
By the way, Devontae Adams, that's 3 touchdowns to 16 red zone targets. 2 touchdowns to 3 targets for.
Andre says Ayuk equals Juju. You can't pay him. Ooh, I don't know about that. Flav says, remember when Ray came in for Debo last year and Kyle Shanahan used him and he played great? He used him versus the Browns when the game plan was for Debo and it worked. Need more BA screens and Ray if Debo is not back. I think Debo's going to be back, but I do agree that Ray can kind of play that Debo light role, and it is kind of disappointing we didn't get that when Debo was out. I think it definitely could have been there. Niner Gold says BA won't have 8 TDs. Kittle and Debo are coming back strongly in the second half. They were unused in the first half. Maybe that's a possibility.
Possible, yeah.
But I mean, I can't say that we can say that with certainty. Flav says BA has the separation when the run game is working, and it's schemed versus zone. He ain't getting separation versus man. Okay, so then I guess we should just not pay BA. It sounds like that's a consensus. Frank Tom Ocean says Larry Springer 2 days in a row. Great show, gents.
What's Larry Springer?
I don't know. He said that, I don't know. Did something happen on your show last night? I'm not aware of what the hell's going on.
Yeah, who's Springer?
Oh, last night, who was it? Mr. Blue Magic got out over his skis.
Okay.
Put him in his place a little bit, and he was dominating. The chat was like, dump Mr. Blue Magic and this and that.
Oh, you had your Collins show yesterday?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
What's the Springer come from, though?
Larry Springer. He's just saying that it got contentious the last couple of weeks or last couple of shows.
I'm slow. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day.
DP says, no offense, after CMC, his 1 TD last few games injured. I don't know. Did you like speech to text that or something?
No, he's saying no touchdown after no production from Christian McCaffrey after his 1 touchdown.
Is he injured?
Injured?
I think he's definitely banged up for sure. I don't know about injured, but he's definitely banged up. Ryan says this is the best show ever. I think it was pretty good.
I liked it when he was, the Lance, when he was predicting Lance was going to beat out Purdy. I thought that was a better show.
Oh, damn. I got to take personal shots. I mean, I think he's been... I don't think he was taking shots at you up here. Flav says, love BA, but can we make the gap in his face mask bigger so maybe some balls will get stuck in there instead of just bouncing off? He had that happen one freaking time.
That's tough. Come on.
Have you ever... I got it, but dude, like, come on, man. Whatever. I mean, I guess every day at your job has been perfect. You've never made one mistake ever. I don't know. I don't get that. GTC Real says, Larry, you have access to the questions with Kyle. You don't work for KNBR who coddles Kyle. Ask the hard-hitting questions, Larry. Why is Mason not playing?
That is coming.
I think if he's being honest, Larry, he's going to say it's because he doesn't know his offense well enough. I really think so.
I already asked him. I already intimated that last week when I asked him. I said, hey, you've got 400 touches. You're on pace for CMC to have 400 touches. That's not sustainable. And he said, well, he's our starting running back, and we like to throw him the ball. So, and he thinks that he thought that it is sustainable. So we'll see.
I will say this. I think that if you can, Larry, can you ask Chris Forrester about what goes in, because he's the run game coordinator, right? Maybe you can't ask him because he's not in charge of snap distribution for running backs. I'm sure that's either like a Bobby Turner, Anthony Lynn thing, but perhaps you could ask him like how they go into game planning, what runs they want for which running backs. And so then it might get us a better idea of how many runs they plan for Christian McCaffrey, perhaps, if they do have a tentative plan of which runs they specifically want with him in the game.
McCaffrey, from what we can tell, has been allowed to call his own shots. So he comes out of the game when he wants to come out of the game, and he has control over it, it sounds like. And I don't know what to say, because Mason had a 26-yard touchdown run against the Cowboys and just never really, I don't think he's touched the ball since.
He had an 8-yarder against Cleveland, I think, because the interception put him at the 8-yard line. Was it Cleveland that happened against?
Did he?
Yeah, I think so. I could be mistaken, but I thought that they intercepted the ball and got down to the 8-yard line, and then the very next play he ran it in for a touchdown.
That was Jordan. Yeah, that was Jordan Mason.
Yeah, but
terrific block from George Kittle.
So I stand corrected. He had one carry.
Uh-huh.
Wait a second. No, he had 5 carries against Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
He had 10 carries against Dallas.
And
Not
that's
against
basically been
Cincinnati.
it. Yeah. It's weird.
And Mitchell, by the way, has been playing.
And none against
he's
Minnesota.
Just, yeah. Well,
Mitchell, they've been doing
played.
like the 2 running back thing, but they haven't been utilizing Mitchell a ton. Flav says pause. I don't know. What is that in reference to? I'm sure we said something super sketchy. What's up, Big
Not
Pat
me.
Sports
I
Talk?
think it was you.
Yeah, probably. He says, yo, what's up, bro? I hope we can both get a victory for real. Well, 49ers can't lose on a bye week. Thank goodness. John
who does
says,
he root for?
I think Giants, if I'm not mistaken. John says 5,300 to win the NFC. I don't feel great. Oh, that was your bet.
Okay.
Damn.
I hope.
I mean, Peter King said he thinks that it will still be Niners Eagles in the NFC title game. So I wouldn't be ripping up that ticket. Who else is going to be in the NFC title game?
I think it was to win the NFC, though.
I know. I'm just saying, at least, if you said to me, the Niners look disappointing, they do. But if you had to sit there and wager on who's going to win the NFC, you'd probably take the Eagles. But wouldn't you take the Niners second?
Right now, 100%. Yeah, I probably 100%. Would.
Yeah.
I mean,
because they're going to be in that game.
Because the Lions, right? The Lions, the one test they had this year, they went into Baltimore. I mean, I guess going into Arrowhead week 1 and winning is a quality win. So but they went into Baltimore and got blown out. And as bad as the Niners have looked the past 2 weeks, like we literally saw Dallas come into Santa Clara and saw what happened there 3 weeks ago. So it's not like that much changes then. So of course, besides Philadelphia, I still think they are on paper, especially with the addition of Chase Young too, right? Like, come on.
Shay takes care of me at the nursing home and he says I need to go to bed. Flav says if Mason was in and missed a block and that led to a Brock injury, who do you think the fans would blame? I think that's it, Flav, is that he does miss some blocks and he does run some of the wrong routes. But I think to everybody else's point is the carries have to go somewhere. So if you know you're going to run the ball, run it with Mason. Get him some carries because he is a hell of a runner. That we do know.
Come on, man. Put your best players on the field.
Kyle doesn't do that, though. Tevin Coleman started the Super Bowl after Mostert went apeshit in the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
This is what he does.
I mean, and you brought it up earlier when I brought up, well, hey, Womack didn't play week 1. Well, you said, hey, Womack and Jameson are better than Thomas and Oliver. So
to me, it's criminal based on what I've seen that Mason hasn't gotten the ball.
I agree.
I'm not seeing it anymore with Elijah Mitchell. I don't see special. I don't see elusiveness. I don't see tackle breaking ability. What I see is a small man who's got a big man's game. He likes to run between the tackles, and he's just getting destroyed. Now, the issue that we haven't talked about at all, which is probably the major issue, is what are the Niners going to do to their offensive line to start running the ball? Because the holes are not there. So what does that mean? Does that mean Brendel just got destroyed by DJ Reader last week? Destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Do you take him out for Feliciano? Well, you can't now because you got Banks with the turf toe. So Feliciano's going to have to play left guard. But when Banks comes back from the turf toe, if he does come back from the turf toe, I'm considering Feliciano over Brendel at center because you're not getting any push. You're not getting any push inside.
Let me ask you this, because I think you can make an argument for Feliciano over Burford as well. Do you think Brendel needs, if you had to bench one of Brendel or Burford, because it seems you're going there, you would still bench Brendel over Burford and keep riding it out with Burford and Feliciano at center?
Yeah, it's tough because Brendel was a Pro Bowl alternate last year, and you got that fresh on the mind. So it's like you're going to bench a guy that was a Pro Bowl alternate, but he's, I don't know. I mean, Burford has had a lot of penalties, and he's not playing particularly well. But isn't he kind of the future at right guard? So I would say Brendel. I'd put in. I think Feliciano at this point has more of a center's game than a guard's game, especially in an offense that likes to move their guards around a little bit and show some mobility. I think Feliciano's not going to have that mobility. So I think I would go with the bigger body and the pivot at center and sit Brendel. But Brendel is, smart, makes calls and is a cerebral player, but he's 280, 285. The other guy's 315, 320. So I don't know. That's a tough call. They got to do something because their offensive line is not opening holes. And that if that trend continues, I guess it won't really matter who the running back is because there's no holes.
Yeah, that's a good point. GTC Real says Flav, Jordan Mason is there to run the ball. Simple. I agree with that. But you know how Kyle is, man. Like this is ooh, my thing is like frozen. I can't pull up the super chats all of a sudden. What the hell?
Uh-oh.
Oh, there it goes. It's took a minute. Greatness says BA would have more production is Trey if Trey was the quarterback. I don't know that we could say that. Ryan says, have any of you ever called Lance a franchise quarterback? I haven't. Larry?
I definitely think he's a franchise quarterback still. It's just in 2025, 2026. He's I believe he's going to get there. I don't see any reason why he won't get there. I think he's going to get there. Don't quit on the kid, Ryan.
Andre says, what is BA's signature play? Hurdling over guys, no signature touchdowns. I love BA, but in year 4, he's not better than Emmanuel Sanders was. He's better now than Emmanuel Sanders was in 2019.
Sanders.
He's much better than 2019 Emmanuel Sanders. Ty Bud says, Jesse, the defense isn't bump coverage, help over the top, and 54 playing middle field and only rush 4. Is it the answer for the defense? 7 in coverage and interrupting the opposition timing seems like the logical answer. Thoughts? Bump coverage, help over the top. I agree. I mean, if you're going to play cover 2 instead of playing off, I mean, trust your safeties to do something. I don't have an issue with that. I have 0 issue with that.
I got a major issue with their safeties. I think their safeties are playing really bad.
I agree.
I don't like what I've seen from Gibson. I haven't seen him come up with he had the big hit penalty, but for the most part, I don't think he's great in the run game. Hafanga under D'Amico looked like really special at timing blitzes and attacking the mesh point. He doesn't look special at all in that regard now. He falls off tackles regularly. Very disappointed. I'd like to see Jair Brown play some safety and see what he looks like, because I know Jair Brown will step into the hole and hit you. And these the safeties are, they missed Ward and they missed Tart, and those guys don't catch the ball and interceptions. And I understand why they went with the ball skill guys, but I mean, look at the run D last year when they had Ebukam and Aziz and Jimmy Ward and Emmanuel Mosley. And now here, a year later, look at the run D. It feels like if Greenlaw and Warner don't make the plays, that the plays are not going to get made.
The whole secondary is kind of not playing great. I mean, even Charvarius Ward there's more to be desired.
Flav says specifically is missing some tackles too, and that's been the big thing. But they're missing tackles as a defense right now. They're missing tackles as a defense right now, so it's hard to just single out one guy.
Well, and they're not playing with any poise in the back end. Charvarius Ward literally grabbed Jamar Chase on like 4 plays in a row to begin the second half and got called for 1 PI. But I mean, it was like he couldn't hang with him at all. And Oliver can't hang in coverage either. So you got one really good cover guy right now in Lenore. and they just can't.
Not
They
good
can't cover
enough.
without committing penalties, holding penalties, DPI penalties. Some of them are ticky tack, but some of them aren't.
Flav says, sorry, Jess, showed up late and didn't realize you'd been defending BA. I really do love BA, but I think he needs a bunch of other weapons and a run game to be good. But that's Kyle's entire offense. That's very true.
Mhm.
That's very true. Everything needs to be perfect. John says, Flav, thoughts on Jimmy G sitting on the bench? Yeah, Jimmy G's not he had a high EPA week 1, I heard though. Flav says, agree. If we ever have a lead again or play in the rain and everyone knows we have to run, Mason should be getting most of those carries. For sure.
I don't think that's
He's
going
a
to
bruiser.
happen. I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
I don't
indication of
yeah,
that.
at this point. Yeah.
We've talked. This has been a 2-year discussion. We know
really
the reasons
has.
why he's not playing, and they have not budged on it for 2 years.
Yeah.
He literally even said 2 weeks before Mason kind of went on ice, he talked about wanting to reduce the load for Christian McCaffrey and understanding all of that. And here we are 2 weeks later, and I think now that they've lost 3 in a row, do you think Christian McCaffrey's getting more or less carries?
They should have made a push for Dalvin Cook was my like sleeper trade option they should have made,
Been no
because he's
money,
a guy that they could have trusted to be everything that you need when CMC was out, at least for a second half of the season. So I don't know if the Jets are willing to give him up or whatever, but he is not happy with his role, and I think he could have came in and gotten 10 touches easy a game. So Andre says, yeah, what do you think, Larry? You think that would have been a good
I think he's done. I
think so?
Dalvin Cook's really cooked. But there was other backs though. There were other backs that were maybe available. Who was the other back? There was some other back that I really liked the idea of.
Sounds like you like Leonard Fournette to the Bills.
Well, yeah, but I mean not for the 49ers.
Not for here, yeah.
There was another back that I was thinking maybe they could. Well, I mean, I know James Conner was rumored.
Taylor for a while, but
no, there was somebody else I was thinking of that wouldn't have been a bad option. I mean, Saquon Barkley was rumored to be moving before the deadline. There was some other back though that I was suggesting that in the last couple of weeks that didn't get moved. Forget who it was.
But either way, you agree that maybe they should have brought in a back that he would trust more. Apparently, he doesn't trust these guys. Something's going on.
Well, I mean, yeah. If you're not going to use, Mitchell or Mason, maybe it would make sense to look at another running back. And I just can't remember who it was that I was aiming for, but it wasn't. Jonathan Taylor early on was a guy. Yeah, I thought, okay, maybe they could go after a Jonathan Taylor, but they just, the 49ers. Very weird situation at running back. I mean, McCaffrey's been the guy, but man, he takes so much abuse. And then it's like, well, Kyle loves him. Then all of a sudden he's dinged up, and then they used him even more. It was like, you know what? He's dinged up. Now we're going to run him every single time. So I don't know. I forget who it was, but there was some back a couple weeks ago. I was thinking, okay, maybe they could go after, some other back and try to, use somebody. And I just, it just never happened. I mean, they just didn't, they didn't show any real interest in adding any other running back. I'm trying to remember who it was, but
people are commenting Donta Foreman. Was that?
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Dante Foreman. Because I thought, what, Kyle, being a Texas guy, Foreman in Chicago, they got Roshan. They had other, they got other backs there. I thought he would be available. There was talk that he would be available. He's actually got really good speed for a big back, and I could see Kyle liking him.
He's good running it every time he gets an opportunity.
If you don't trust the other guys, I mean, realistically, if they stay with the usage rate that McCaffrey's got, they're going to wind up using the other backs. I mean, it's like you can use the other back. You're going to have to use your other backs. Yeah. You're going to use them now and try to
wait till he's injured.
Yeah, or run McCaffrey into the ground and then use your other backs.
Right.
But you will be using your other backs.
I agree. Andre says also it's not BA's fault that Kyle won't feature him with Debo out and CMC not fully healthy. Why wouldn't he feature his best receiver? I will say the game plan, was it last week or the week before, where he'd had like 7 targets in the first half and caught 5 passes, and then it was like nothing.
versus Minnesota. It was versus Minnesota.
That was strange. That was and we can't. I mean, he definitely.
But they kind of took him away because at that point in the game, they were able to plan and play man coverage and use a lot of different techniques to kind of take him and double him. Because again, with Debo out, with Trent out, it has an effect on these other weapons too. It's not just
pushes everybody down.
Right.
Flav says, I feel like all of our guys except for CMC were handpicked specifically for Kyle Shanahan's system and wouldn't be nearly as good somewhere else. But also why Kyle Shanahan goes to CMC all the time, because his system isn't working. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely overusing him. Feels like it.
But to be fair, I agree with both of you. But there's also a part of me that's like, it's Christian McCaffrey, right? Like if you had Christian McCaffrey, because of how good he is, wouldn't you try and use him every chance you can get? But then there's also the responsibility of Shanahan, I guess, to protect him from himself. So I guess I see both sides of it. And I wasted everybody's 2 minutes telling them I see both sides of it.
Fish and Shift says Mason outran CMC, benched Irish Mafia, John, Kyle, and CMC. Nice. Basketball Can Niner says we need fresh eyes on Kyle's playbook, and OC would be beneficial right now. Kyle's going to do what Kyle does,
year.
Man. Yeah.
And
John,
he fixes the offense every year.
Yeah. I mean, last year, I think it was the injection of CMC. We'll see what happens. Although they are getting an injection of 2 very good players that have been out for the last few weeks. So maybe it gets fixed then too. John says, I would have traded for Cook and cut Mitchell. I mean, does TDP deserve to be on this team? Flav says, not surprised on Jimmy G not playing. More surprised they didn't try to trade him and others. I would have been fine with starting Trey if our team had sucked too. You're saying O'Connell, going to O'Connell because they're not playing well? Yeah, but Jimmy's the reason they're not playing well. Like, Jimmy sucks, dude.
Dobbs has played better.
They got a bad line, too. They got a bad line. They got a bad D.
Jimmy's not good,
Jimmy's
though,
beaten to all kinds of hell, too, this year as well. Let's be honest. He's had like 4 different kinds of injuries this year already.
He's just not good.
Jimmy regressed and never got better. I mean, he doesn't throw the ball outside the numbers. He doesn't throw the ball down the field. And then, I mean, it's like his accuracy, to me, like he just looked really bad. In that Pittsburgh game, he looked really jittery. And I mean, it's a wrap for him. And then what about all that talk about, weird stuff's going on in San Francisco? Really? Weirder stuff's going on in Vegas.
Clearly.
Niners Gold says,
dude, AOC is not that good. That's all I got to say.
No. If CMC, Trent are injured, goodbye to the season. No run. That's yeah. Flav says no point in starting Jimmy G and winning 7 games. See if you have something in McConnell. It's not McConnell, is it? What's his name?
Aiden O'Connell.
O'Connell.
That's what I thought. Lose.
But
I was like,
7 games.
Sound right. Lose more games and get a better draft pick.
I don't know about 7, dude. Jimmy looks beaten to all hell. Jimmy does not look good.
Are they going to try to go for Harbaugh? Is that what this whole thing's about?
I feel like when he said return of the Raider way, I mean, would it not be apropos for Harbaugh when Michigan's under investigation to pull a little Pete Carroll and skirt right back to the NFL? And who else is going to bring back Raider football besides Jim Harbaugh? He's literally like the old school representation of what Raider football means.
What a weird situation, though, man. I mean, could you imagine if you got a 6-year contract at your job and they fired you and had to pay you a year and a half in, and you had 4.5 years of sitting on the beach doing nothing?
They're paying 2 head coaches right now, I think.
I mean, they're pulling up Niners. Awesome. The Niners did that for Tom Sula and Chip Kelly.
That's true.
I wish real life was like that. Hey, you know what? You're here's 4 years to go. Just do whatever you want. You're going to keep getting paid.
That'd be nice.
Would be awesome.
And you're not. It's not that you're going to get paid like a couple $100,000. You're not going to get paid a severance check. You're literally just going to get a couple $1 million to sit on the beach, enjoy, let your family, inherit this money, all of that. Oh my
awesome.
God.
Be absolutely incredible.
Like Trent Baalke, wherever Jim Tom Sula is, he must call Trent Baalke and thank him every day for hiring him for that 1 year and changing his family's life.
Andre Zenovich said, you didn't answer my question. What's your favorite Ayuk play? Sorry about that, Andre. My favorite Ayuk play would have been, it was right after they had gotten a penalty in the Arizona game, the one that Trey had started. And
I thought he meant what pattern does you
like? No. I think he's saying his signature play. He had the signature play question, I'm pretty sure. And he had caught the ball in traffic and then took it upfield for a first down after a big penalty that it kind of flipped the momentum in that game. So that would probably be my favorite play. I guess the two where he cleared cleared the DBs as well, you can make an argument for, but that was probably my favorite Ayuk play.
Oh, I mean, if I'm going to go to my favorite Ayuk play, I'm going to go with in camp this summer. I mean, there was some crazy crossing pattern in the middle of the field. I thought it was the day that you were there, Jesse, and Ayuk just, almost flew. I mean, he was so far in the air. It was crazy. I would say he showed like 3.5 foot vertical. I mean, it was crazy watching this guy go up for this crossing pattern. He made a couple of leaps this summer that were like, you got to be kidding me.
I like the fade on Patrick Peterson. Come on, week one, that was sweet. Patrick Peterson had some words. First break his ankles, then get to hit him with the back shoulder fade. Come on. Remember those times so long ago, just a month ago,
just a whole month ago,
when these shows were about Pickett versus Purdy.
Things were much simpler then, Vish. I didn't realize this was a thing. I guess correct this lie, Larry. Have I ever insulted your kid? I need this on record because that is not who I am. Did he ever say that you insulted his kid?
I never said. Did I say that?
No, I think he's talking about.
I don't know what's
going on.
I lost track of the chat.
Let me state this loudly and clearly for everybody. Ryan is a good family man. He loves his family. It's what I respect most about him. He never insulted my kid. And if anybody thinks otherwise, they're wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe somebody in the chat brought it up. I've never heard you. I don't think I've ever heard you say that. Andre Zenovich says, what's more impressive, CMC's TD streak or Brock nearing the most consecutive starts of any Shanahan Niner quarterback? More impressive, CMC. More disturbing is the quarterback one. The fact that they haven't had a quarterback start that many games in a row, that's
the more impressive.
They just haven't had the consistency.
Yeah, the more my bad. The more impressive is definitely CMC because it's a historic rate. But I think the Brock one is equally as impressive just because, dude, he's been beaten to hell the last few games. He's been taking some ridiculous hits and he keeps getting up. Like, it's a testament to his toughness. And like I said, when we were having this debate a week ago, and I said I needed a larger sample size, part of how I evaluate quarterbacks is availability, getting yourself to be able to play week in and week out. And dude, he's showing all kinds.
He's had
a
couple where it looked like he wasn't going to, and he fought
and he's
through
been getting
it.
Himself
so you got to
up
give him credit for that for sure. Yeah, you do.
The CMC streak is amazing. Really, that Brock thing is more about Jimmy, of course, and Jimmy could never stay healthy. I mean, and you know what? The other part of this that no Niner fan wants to necessarily hear, but, it's starting to come home to roost that the 49ers have not invested enough capital in their offensive line. And, is Jimmy kind of glass? Yeah. But have the Niners been negligent in their investment on their offensive line? Yeah. So that's kind of, to me, if you say, where do you rank your complaints? I mean, Shanahan's had a lot of success, right? They've been in 3 of the last 4 NFC Championship games. He's had a lot of success with the Niners. What would be your biggest complaint of the Shanahan era? To me, it's the lack of an investment in the offensive line.
So I'm going to make a blanket statement
more.
Here, and I'm going to hope that this time we can agree, or maybe I'll unleash another 1-hour debate, perhaps between Krug and Jesse, hopefully this time, so I can sit on the sidelines. But I think the 49ers offensive line without Trent Williams is just bad. It's just bad without Trent Williams.
Oh, no,
Brendel's not
right.
very good.
Yes.
Burford's not very good. McKivitz is not very good. Banks
Yes.
is like average at best. He's a little bit better when he plays next to Williams. And then Jalen Moore is not very good either.
No, it's not a good offensive line. No, I agree with that.
Offensive line is oftentimes about the investment. So Trent's a first. He's your best offensive lineman. Banks is a second. He's your second best offensive lineman. After that, right? I mean, Burford was what, a fourth? Something like that. Brendel was an undrafted free agent. McKivitz was a fifth. So
I mean, outside of Trent, those four guys are making like $8 million this year combined. It's not good.
And it's just, you
get what you pay for.
I thought there was potential for this offensive line. I thought there was potential for Burford this year.
I agree.
He's regressed, and Brendel was a Pro Bowl alternate last year, but I mean, does not move anybody in the run game. And I like McKivitz, but McKivitz had a rough game. Was it in Minnesota 2 weeks ago? That was a rough game.
Flav says, it feels like Kyle Shanahan lost McDaniel and was struggling, then got CMC and it saved his A. Now the D has adjusted again, and Kyle either has to actually change or the defense needs to find a way to hold teams to 16 points a game. Yeah, we'll see, Flav. I mean, I think, here's the thing.
Also can't turn the ball over in the red zone. First and goal at the 8-yard line, can't turn it over. Can't fumble in the red zone, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah.
So there's other stuff going on that's wrong. They're making mistakes in key scoring areas. And then, of course, Moody's missed a couple kicks too. I
agree with that. I think your original point, Flav, which is this offense is great when all the sum of its parts are there, is probably the best point you made, because it feels like if anything is missing, everything just falls apart. That can't be the case. Larry, John says, Larry, my $5,300 isn't garbage. The 49ers will finish 12-5, but the number one seed is gone because Wilkes called a 0 with 16 seconds left in the half. I think a lot of things happened as to why you may not see the number one seed for the 49ers. That is certainly one of them. I
don't know that the number one seed's gone yet because there is a lot of games, but
it's going to be tough, though.
In conference loss, though, that was the tough part about it. At least the Bengals and the Browns were out of conference. Cincinnati
Philly's got to lose.
Detroit is not the best team in the conference by any means, but that schedule, it's hard to find even 3 losses on the rest of it. It is. So we'll see. I think Detroit might be the number one seed. And again, I would probably say they're maybe as low as the 5th best team in the NFC, but that's not what it's about sometimes. So we'll see. Lob says, thank you, Jesse. I can now debate you on X. Hey, I said I would unblock you. You asked me. You called in. And we talked, so you're good.
Oh, wait, what happened
there? What happened there?
Yeah, well, I want to hear this.
Lob's call. Actually, Lobs and I went back and forth a while ago, and I told him that if he called in, I would unblock him because he was talking about like calling in or doing some sort of like something, but he didn't want to go on Twitter Space. So I said, you can always call into my show. It's always open. So I kind of forgot about it, and like a month later, he called in. And I didn't unblock him, but I also kind of just forgot that I told him that I would. And so months and months have passed by, and he called in again last night and was like, hey, you said that if I called in that you would unblock me. Like, this is the second time calling in. I'm like, fair enough. So I unblocked him.
Oh, dude, he got you. Yeah, dude, not a man of your word.
But see, here's the thing. This is the thing about Twitter.
Do you block
a lot? Not a lot. I mute a ton. I mute all the time.
Larry loves the mute. Who
did you mute, Larry? No, I don't mute.
No, Larry likes the block.
No, you like the blocking. Sorry,
he likes the block. I don't like the mute.
He loves the block. Yeah. I love the mute because people think that like you're hearing them, and so they continue to waste their time on your posts, and you never respond because you don't see them. It's hilarious.
I muted Ted, but I blocked it. I usually block. I usually will block, but I blocked Ted, and then he was so agitated by it that I said, you know what? No more blocking.
I'm a muter.
I got to mute.
I'm a muter. Definitely a muter.
But muting is, let's be honest, muting, there's something a little tougher about blocking than muting.
No, muting is way better. It totally, like I said, they just yell at you and they're constantly under your comments and you never see it. And it's fantastic. And they waste so much time trying to get your attention and it just never works because you don't see them.
But muting is kind of like, I don't know. Muting, it's like if
Dude,
you're
do
going to be
neither.
mad at somebody, stand up and be mad at them. Don't just be like, hey, we're cool, but you're muted.
It's the rules of Twitter. Most
do
of the
neither.
things that people say, if I'm being real, if they said in real life, would get them smacked. That's what would really happen. But since it's Twitter and people want to be little pussies, then guess what? You get muted. So that's the way it works.
Come on. Don't mute or block. I do neither. You got to be there for the full experience.
Nah,
And
I
the
can't
full
do it.
social
These
media
people, too many
experience is
people are
just getting
weirdos,
the
man. I
most
can't
out
do
of
it.
pocket things
No.
ever said to you.
People are
Sometimes
weirdos.
they
I
get to you
can't do
too,
it.
but you got to take them.
I can't do it. Nope.
Sometimes when I do my anti-San Francisco Giants stuff, I'll do tweets and I'll see how many individual words in a tweet can people take offense to.
How many
It's
individual
amazing.
words?
It's amazing. What'd you mean by pro? What'd you mean by less? What did you mean by? It's like, Jesus, dude. You got to be kidding me.
I do that sometimes. In fact, tonight it happened where I posted a stat with zero context. Didn't give him my opinion. Didn't give any context just to see the outrage. And people are like, oh, yeah, way to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I didn't say anything. I literally posted a stat with zero context and zero opinion. And you turned it into this whole thing that it was not meant to be. But that is one of my favorite things to do to people.
Wait. Pull up this super chat.
Which one? This one?
Yeah. Oh, no, the one after this. We could do this.
I will
too,
in a
though.
second.
Yeah.
Andre says, how about not just losing Saleh, McDaniels, Ryans? How many assistants did they take with them every year? Shanahan said, no, that's a good point, man. It's a very, very good point. And also, it's hard. It's hard to replace those guys. It really is. GTC Real says, Larry once blocked me because I poo-pooed his STMT. What's that?
Statement
That the 2012 Giants were the best offensive lineup in the San Francisco era. Larry's a good dude, but often wrong. Is that what you know? Talking about?
I guarantee you that you used some language that if you'd been standing next to me, I would have dropped you. And there's no way it was just like, hey man, the Giants offense is no good. And I'm just like, no, yes it is. You said the magic word. You said something. I don't.
You want to know who
I don't block people unless they say something that I'm absolutely convinced they would not say to my face.
Do you want to know who the serial blocker of Twitter is? It's Tim Kawakami. He blocks everybody for nothing.
Mike Silver's up there.
But Mike Silver, I feel like he has thicker skin. Tim blocked me like years ago when I was first getting into this. And I wasn't even like jaded at that point. I wasn't snarky to anybody. He had said something and I would just ask him a question back. I'm like, hey, well, what do you think about this? And he blocked me. It's like, dude, are you kidding? I can't even ask a question about your article. Chill, man. Chill.
I like to block people if they say something that's that's offensive, or I feel like you wouldn't say it to my face. But then after about I'm very forgiving. So after like 4 or 5 months, I'll say to Kev, hey, Kev, go put everybody back in the pool. and then it's always kind of like the Wild West.
How many people have gotten blocked multiple times? I wonder.
There have been people. I got a guy today who sent me a thing. He said, "You blocked me before, and then you let me back in. I know you're going to block me again today." And then I'm like, just because you think I'm going to block you, I'm not going to. I forgive people, so I'm always like, all right, everybody back in.
Larry Krueger loves everybody. Forgive and forget, baby.
I'm like Jackie Moon from Semi-Pro. Everybody love everybody.
Lob says trade Ayuk and draft a receiver. Loaded draft. Thoughts? I think the play was trading Debo before you signed him, but
I'm in for that.
But yeah.
I'll say this: the Niners need more speed at wide receiver. Agreed. I mean, they do not. Debo, I have not seen open in a long freaking time, as far as not open within 2 yards of the line of scrimmage. I'm saying down the field, open. I can't remember the last time he was truly open. I kind of wonder about his route running. And Juwan is never open. And
yeah, he doesn't create any separation.
Ray's got speed, but he's never really super open. The one thing I will say about Ayuk is that he definitely creates. He's more open than those guys.
Flav says, I think the Lions for sure the number 1 seed. Game in Philly will determine the tiebreaker for number 2 seed. But if we lose, I'd rather be the 4 seed than 3 behind Philly. I agree.
He's
I
basically
definitely
saying
would
so they
rather
wouldn't
play
have to deal with
Philly.
Philly until the NFC Championship.
Yeah, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. John says, bench Oliver, name Richard Sherman D coordinator. I don't think
John, they've
Richard wants to
tried.
coach.
They've tried benching Oliver multiple times this year. The problem is they can't because
They
every
can't
time they
quit
bench
him.
him, they're forced to put him back on the field.
They
Playing
can't quit
Oliver
him.
isn't a choice; it's a need right now.
Steve Wilkes loves Oliver. I mean, there's no doubt.
Andre says, people say we were outcoached past 3 weeks. 2 of the 3 opponents had an extra week to prepare. Yeah, that's a fair.
You know
point.
what? Here's the other thing about the last 3 weeks. When we did the stream, and I forget exactly who I streamed with. When we did the stream after the Warren Sharp article, and we took all of the rest into the equation.
That was with me.
Okay, we kind of looked at the season and said, it's going to be really tough to beat the Bengals. It's going to be really tough to beat the Browns. And then sure enough, Minnesota in the middle on the road was easy to envision just because, well, I was picturing Justin Jefferson, but
you got Jordan Addison.
but I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's like that 3-game stretch, when you looked at the rest factor, I mean, think about it this way. Warren Sharp wrote that article and it got a lot of attention. But I mean, for such a major factor, you so rarely hear about the rest advantage. I mean, look at all the other things, all the previews you've read, all the pregame shows. Like nobody ever hardly talks about the rest advantage.
No.
And we know that's significant. Why is
Yeah,
that?
it was definitely a talking point that I think a lot of us hit on that this season. And
after the article. But like once the games come up, like
you kind of
nobody was saying,
right?
Oh man, the Bengals, they've been sitting around and the Niners are no, it was like the Niners need a win and they need a win before the bye week. And maybe they'll get it. It's like,
I brought that up. I brought up the rest discrepancy with both of it.
I brought it up too, but I mean,
the Bengals were coming off of a bye, but that the Niners were on a short week. There were 2 variables that played into it, right?
Right.
And that's what I thought was particularly unfair because a team coming off of a bye and a team having a normal week, that's going to happen in every NFL season. This one was extra bad because the Niners were coming home from a short week on the road, and that's what made it unfair.
What makes it unfair is it doesn't even out. So like the Jets, I think had what? Remember the thing? It was like they had like 11 games or some ridiculous thing with a rest advantage, and I think the Bears had none. I mean, that's where you look at the NFL and you go,
Hey, living in the Midwest is nice, Larry.
Yeah, that shows that the NFL badly wanted Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in the playoffs.
All right, I gotta get through these. I gotta be up in 4 hours and 45 minutes. I got 4 hours and 45 minutes before I got to be up. So I'm getting through these super chats quickly. G-Code Travel says, are 49ers banking on Womack to be the savior? Hafunga 2.0. I mean, he's not a safety. That would be, I hope that's not what the plan is for the second half of the season. Manny PSF says, Larry can't admit when he's wrong, like when he said Purdy is good or that Trey would be traded. Or that McCaffrey was a great trade, was or was not a great trade. Oh, wait.
Purdy is good. Trey was traded.
I think he's complimenting you, Larry.
Yeah, I think so,
he's saying, oh, Larry can't admit he's wrong. Oh, wait, look, he's always right.
Oh, yeah, maybe that's it. I was like, wait a minute. Or that McCaffrey was a great trade.
Damn you, Manny. Oh, no. Thanks, Manny.
It took me until the last one to understand it. Andre says, no advantage with our bye coinciding with the Jags bye on the road. Damn. Yeah, that's a great point, too. They're also coming off a bye. Plus, I feel like they have an intel advantage. They just saw the 49ers lose 3 straight games, so they have the blueprint. So we'll see.
And the one advantage the Niners do have, I think it's Philly, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the Niners have a rest advantage against Philly.
Yeah, but they got to go to Philly
versus Seattle.
But they got to go to Philly.
Back-to-back road. I think no. I'm sorry. That's at home. I think Thursday night Thanksgiving, then at Philly, then at Seattle. So they kind of have a rough back-to-back. Come on, at Philly, at Seattle.
No, it's at
road.
I think
Seattle.
it's at Seattle.
At Seattle, then
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
it's at okay.
Yeah.
You know what?
It's at Seattle on
I
Thanksgiving.
rescind my statement.
Then Philly.
Yeah.
At Philly, then homes against Seattle. But
that's not as bad, actually. But
Yeah.
still, at Philly to at Seattle is not easy, no matter how much rest you have in between to do that double whammy stretch.
Depends what you think of Seattle.
But I think playing in Seattle is hard regardless of Seattle.
Yeah.
Lob says, why doesn't Kyle go on the field when players get hurt? It's not a good look. Just look at his dumb playbook while Warner was screaming in pain. He did the same thing to Debo. People don't talk about it, and they don't look that far into those things, Lobs. I actually agree with you. I think it's an awful look. I personally, it's just a leadership thing. I don't think it's good optics. Lob says Ayuk equals replaceable. Debo is not. Cheat code. Debo can't stay healthy, man, and he's not producing. He just isn't. I don't know. And they could have gotten a lot more for Debo going into that offseason than what they would get for Ayuk this upcoming offseason, in my opinion. G Code says, Larry, what's Balky's take playing against the 49ers?
They're coming across. They're coming to our place. And I'll tell you, our place is a tough place to play, Lowry. And I'll tell you right now that if the 49ers think they're going to roll into Jacksonville and they're just going to roll their jocks out there, I'll tell you, Lowry, it's not going to be that easy for them.
Is Gerald Hodges going to play, Trent?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Vish, because Gerald Hodges is a hell of a backer. And Lowry, you've been talking down about Gerald Hodges for a lot of years now. And I'll tell you, as far as linebackers go, he's a linebacker. I'll tell you that.
As far as linebackers go, he's a linebacker. Probably as football cliche as you can get in a statement.
I'll tell you, you can't make the club in the tub, Vish. I've said it for years. And it's the way you play, the day you play. And you know what? I'll take it to the grave with me.
I will say the Ezra Cleveland move was a hell of a move for them. Ezra Cleveland's a good player.
Yeah, I think so. That was a good get. It's hard to get offensive linemen at the trade deadline.
I mean, where the Niners didn't want that for a sixth?
I was wondering about that too, but we're 3 hours, 10 minutes into the show. Maybe we can have that conversation another time.
1:30 in the morning, okay? I got to be up at 6:15.
It's funny that you think it's so late, Jesse, because out here on the West Coast, it's really more like 10:30, and some of us are getting ready to go out and party.
Yeah, speak for yourself, Trent. You're an East Coaster. You're in Florida, too. Andre says Debo got paid and has to have a huge impact the rest of the year. 2021, he was off to a great receiving statistical year. Carry your young quarterback. You're paid. He's not. I love that comment, and I agree. Kevin says, okay, Larry, let's trade BA to Kansas City or Miami, and let's see his numbers at the season end. You have to have red zone targets.
Red one targets, he said.
Yeah, I think
he meant so.
Just left the Z out. John says Geno has regressed. 49ers will sweep Seattle. Man, he had a throw last week against the Browns guys that was so incredible for a touchdown. So silly. Check that throw out.
Silly
rolling
great,
left.
You mean?
Yeah.
Yes. Rolling left after getting flushed out of the pocket, actually avoiding a sack, rolled left, and just dropped a dime over the corner. It was a great, great pass. Ryan says, here's a super chat to keep you up later. I love you and hate you, Ryan. Thank you. Flav says, just sending this in to prevent you from getting more, F both of you, getting more sleep to even out your hair loss for all the years of Trey takes and Jimmy back.
All I got to say is if this stream has shown us anything, it's that, as Charles Barkley says, any of us can come together and sing Kumbaya. Because who would have thought that we would have a stream where we're kept up because Lobs all day and Flav are donating to Jesse? Did you think that in June? Come on, we can all be together and sing Kumbaya. As
Flav's been here forever, man. I will give Flav credit. He's been here for a long.
Flav loves the fire, dude. He
time.
competes. He's in the middle of it.
Flav loves his YouTube Niner talk.
He does. Flav says 4 hours, 3 minutes, and 15 seconds if you go to sleep now. God, 4 hours and 1 minute now. I hate you. I hate you. Okay, we're out of here. Love y'all. I won't be back probably until, I don't know, maybe early next week, maybe later this week. We'll see. Larry's on every day because this is what he does. And Vish, I don't know what your schedule is, but make sure
Tomorrow
you
morning,
subscribe to all 3.
and then probably not for a while.
Okay. And Vish's channel, we're going to be there next week. That's the rotation. Next week we'll be on Vish's channel. Make sure you subscribe there. Pig in a pickle. All right. We'll